Hello everyone. If you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, like it as well, that it enjoy.
Chapter 1. A shrill alarm blared through the stillness of early morning. A hand flailed out from beneath the covers, smacking around in search of the snooze button. Missed once, twice, then a groggy growl, followed by a sudden crack. The clock shattered under a frustrated blow. Silence. With a groan, the young man sat up, his messy hair a battlefield of sleep and sweat. Stretching with a series of pops and satisfying cracks, he muttered something unintelligible under his breath and finally stood. As he shuffled toward the bathroom, his gaze briefly drifted to a nearby table. An orange mask stared back at him, spiraled, emotionless. Beside it lay a folded cloak adorned with red clouds. He paid the mask and cloak on the table no mind as he trudged into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face to wipe away the last traces of sleep. He looked up, sharp facial features, black spiky hair, and eyes that were normally onyx black, until they shifted. Red pooled into his irises, three tomo forming smoothly before twisting into a more intricate design, the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, patterned like a war god's seal. Then, just as quickly, they faded back to black. Max sighed, still not used to that. After a quick breakfast, eggs, toast, and instant coffee, the holy trinity of tired superheroes, he changed into the classic blue mailman uniform. He slung his bag over one shoulder, gave himself a once-over, and glanced at the remains of his poor alarm clock on the nightstand. "I really need to stop doing that," he muttered. He stepped outside into the crisp morning air, locking the door behind him. "Hey Max, how are you doing, my boy? Here we go again," Max thought as he spotted his neighbor, Mr. Barkley, standing by his white picket fence, newspaper in one hand and a big smile on his weathered face. Max knew the man well. Once Mr. Barkley started talking, he did not stop. One topic turned into five, which turned into a dissertation on local politics, the war, and why sandwiches tasted better in 1973. Max had mastered the art of walking responses, talking just enough to be polite while moving fast enough to escape. "Good morning, Mr. Barkley," Max said, already heading down the path. "Doing just fine, if you don't count in back pains as always." The old man chuckled, shuffling toward the fence. "Why don't you just see a doctor for once?" Max asked over his shoulder as he closed the gate behind him. "Going to the hospital means your days are numbered, and I've still got a good decade to go," Mr. Barkley called back proudly. Max let out a short laugh. "All right, you do you, and I'll do me," he said, already turning the corner. He could still hear Mr. Barkley muttering something about kids these days, and back in my time, but it faded into the morning buzz of Star City. Max smiled to himself. Annoying, but harmless. The old man was just too kind and he'd occasionally hang out with him when he is free. Yes, his name was Max. Max Martinez now, but that wasn't the name on any birth certificate, not in this world anyway. He had transmigrated into this universe 7 months ago. One second he'd been a regular guy from Earth. The next, he woke up in a cold alley, naked, confused, and inside a body that wasn't his. That first week was pure chaos. No phone, no ID, no idea where, or who, he was. But thankfully, he wasn't completely alone. Because he had a Goldfinger, a template system, to be exact. The kind every isekai nerd dreams about. And his first template. Madara Uchiha. The system didn't give him everything at once. He had to work for it. Fight, kill, grow. But even at just 10%, it was enough to beat a group of street thugs, steal some clothes, and walk out of that alley with his first few bucks in a pair of too tight jeans. And man, was that uncomfortable, especially when he found a stain at the back while taking it off. The real problem came when he tried to get a place to sleep that wasn't a park bench. That's when he realized the obvious. He didn't exist. No driver's license, no social security number, no school records, fingerprints or facial recognition hits. He was a ghost. At first, he didn't even know that was a problem. He figured he could just rent a motel and lay low. But when the guy at the front desk asked for ID, Max froze. "I lost it," he'd said. The man narrowed his eyes. "All right, what's your name and number? I can pull you up." That's when Max gave the most generic name he could think of, John Smith. Nothing. Not a single match. He tried again. Still nothing. Even fake names usually got some hit. So Max made a call from a stolen burner to a city clerk office, pretending to be his own assistant. They ran the name. No record. No Max Martinez. No Max anything. No medical history, criminal record. No credit, no paper trail. Nothing. It was official. He didn't exist in this world at all, which in its own way had its perks. So Max improvised. He beat information out of a small-time ID forger named Rico, paid him with money snatched from a crook he had caught mugging a woman, and also made a fake birth certificate, fake social number, fake job history, even a postal test record. The name, Max Bullock, it had a nice civilian ring to it. He filed for a change to Martinez a month later to make it more personal. Using that ID, he managed to rent a cheap apartment for 2 months. Then, with more, liberated, cash, he put a down payment on a permanent place. He was still paying it off in monthly installments through a completely legit mailman paycheck. By day, he was Max Martinez, mailman, low-income civilian, quiet guy who waved at neighbors and delivered bills. By night, he became Tobi, the masked menace. He wasn't a hero, not by their standards, and neither did he weigh to be one. He didn't kill everyone, but he had standards: rape, child trafficking, murdering innocents. Anyone caught doing those, you didn't get a second chance. You got a one-way trip to the afterlife. That reputation, plundering from criminals, killing the worst of the worst, earned him a place on both villains' hit lists and heroes' watch lists. He'd clashed with a few of the costume do-gooders before who had less restraint towards villains in this world. He would fight them for a while to compare his fighting skills, more specifically Madara's fighting skills, against them at certain fusion percentages. He adjusted the strap on his mailbag, humming as he turned the corner. Life in this world wasn't so bad, as long as you had strength and absolutely never took public transportation. Because Max had tried that once. One single bus ride. It was raining. He didn't feel like walking. Just this once, he told himself. What could go wrong? He was on that bus for 8 minutes before some wannabe anarchist stood up, shoved a pistol to Max's temple, and started screaming about justice, oppression, and how the whole bus was rigged with explosives. Get on the ground. Max had complied, of course. Couldn't exactly beat up the guy civilians without blowing the mask off his double life. Sure, he could have done it and said he has some training, but he didn't like explaining too much. But that day was burned into his memory of how things in this world change from a good normal day to a worst one. And the guy with the gun, he was still in intensive care, last Max heard. Max had found him. Tobi had made sure the man would never point a weapon at anyone again. Now he ate through a straw and screamed in his sleep. Not that anyone ever connected the dots, he was just that damn good. Sure, Green Arrow and his sidekick eventually stormed in and saved the day with his lame-ass cringy one-liners. But Max didn't wait for that kind of rescue anymore. He made a promise to himself walking home in the rain that day. No more buses, ever. He could take a bullet. He could take a beating. But sitting in a box waiting for another maniac to yell, "Everyone down!" Or a fight between the heroes and villains spiraling towards them. Nah, hard pass on that. Chapter 2. Max continued walking, enjoying the rare peace of a morning without explosions, kidnappings, or angry metahumans screaming about domination. And then, flash, a blinding light engulfed his vision, and the world around him twisted like it had been yanked through a blender. He staggered, eyes wide, suddenly surrounded by a glowing tunnel. Energy crackled all around, glowing gold and red and blue, stretching endlessly in every direction like a technicolor wormhole. Just ahead, for a fraction of a second, he saw a familiar figure, a man in crimson, lightning trailing behind him, sprinting through the glowing chaos like it was just another jog. Then, snap, the light vanished. Max blinked and stumbled, back on the sidewalk where he'd been seconds ago. Same cracked pavement, same humming street lamp. A pigeon looked at him sideways like he was the weirdo. WTF, Max muttered, spinning in a slow circle. No signs of energy, no lingering light, just reality, pretending like nothing happened. But Max wasn't buying it. He narrowed his eyes, dusted off his jacket, and muttered, "Yeah. That was definitely the Speed Force tunnel. I've seen enough CW nonsense to know that look." It wasn't the first time Flash had played fast and loose with the timeline, but it was the first time Max had gotten a front row seat. He let out a slow breath, rubbing his temples. Great, just great. Flash is messing with time again. He looked down the street, as if expecting a dinosaur, robot apocalypse, or alternate universe doppelganger to appear. Nothing happened, at least from what he could see at first. Max resumed his walk, a bit faster this time, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Something felt off. There were fewer people on the street than there had been before the Speed Force flicker. The atmosphere was tense, quiet, wrong. Most of the buildings around him looked abandoned, shattered windows, boarded doors, dead silence humming beneath the city noise. Okay, something's definitely wrong. He rounded the corner and saw a crowd huddled in front of a massive TV screen mounted on the side of a building. Curious and uneasy, Max pushed his way through, muttering apologies as he squeezed past civilians, many of whom looked gaunt, desperate, on edge. Then he saw the broadcast. Greater than, Atlantis and the Miski RA declared total war, London falls. Footage played behind the anchor's grim face. Crumbling buildings, tidal waves swallowing coastlines, burning forests, soldiers in golden armor clashing against armored sea creatures in the ruins of cities. Britain, conquered, by the Amazons. No way, Max breathed, stumbling back a step. He stared at the headline, at the chaos, at the panic on every face. If things were what he thought they were, Barry really screwed up the timeline. Max's mind raced. He'd watched enough DC content to piece this together, animated movies. This wasn't just some minor shift. This was Flashpoint. Barry Allen, depressed after being criticized by Zoom that he always saves everyone except those who matter, had ran back through time, and saved his mother. And in doing so, shattered the delicate balance of reality, creating a new timeline called the Flashpoint Paradox, where his actions created a spacetime ripple that altered the original course of events, dooming the whole planet. Hal Jordan never became Green Lantern. He would die trying to kamikaze Aquaman's warship. Superman crashed in Metropolis, not Kansas. Thousands dead on impact, captured by the government, locked away, no sun, no hope. Barry never got in that accident that have him the Speed Force, so he never became the Flash. Cyborg was a government dog, not a League member. Bruce Wayne was the one who died in the alley, so Thomas Wayne became Batman. Martha Wayne, shattered by grief, became the Joker. And the war between Atlantis and Themyscira. It began when Wonder Woman and Aquaman's secret affair was discovered by Queen Mara. She confronted Diana, and got beheaded. Wonder Woman, ever proud, took Mara's tiara as a trophy. And so the sea rose. The skies burned. The world collapsed. It was all a mess. A giant cosmic mistake. Max stood there in stunned silence as the crowd murmured around him. He needed to find Flash and Batman so he can fix his bullshit. Well, fuck this, Max muttered. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a seal-shaped tattoo etched into his wrist, an intricate swirl of lines and symbols, pulsing faintly with chakra. He formed a hand seal. The tattoo glowed. Poof. In a burst of smoke, his uniform vanished, replaced by a long, black cloak patterned with red clouds, its hem swaying with barely restrained power. A familiar orange mask, single eyehole spiraled like a vortex, snapped into place over his face. On his feet, open-toed boots, ninja style. No more pretending. If this was the Flashpoint timeline, it was going to be reset anyway. All of this broken, twisted world, would be wiped clean and everyone would forget. Everyone except two people. Flash, and that redayed time-traveling bastard, Eobard Thawne. And neither of them were around to see his face. His one visible eye narrowed, and morphed. Red turned to violet. His iris rippled into concentric rings. Rinnegan. He raised one hand and slammed it down onto the pavement. Summoning jutsu. A massive puff of smoke erupted from the ground, startling the surrounding civilians who had just begun to recover from the broadcast. Out of the smoke emerged a gigantic bird, emerald green feathers, a razor-sharp yellow beak, and eyes that matched Max's own, Rinnegan. Gasps echoed through the street. Max didn't look at anyone. He leapt onto the creature's back in a single smooth motion and gave a silent command. The bird screeched once, wings spreading wide like sails catching a divine wind, then with one powerful beat, it launched into the sky, leaving a galaforce gust in its wake. Max's cloak fluttered behind him as the city shrank below. Buildings, roads, people, all blurred into silence. The wind howled past him as the bird soared across broken skies, the world beneath a war-torn patchwork of twisted fate. Max crouched low on the creature's back, his cloak flapping violently behind him, his orange mask hiding all but his eye, the one glowing Rinnegan scanning the horizon for his destination. Wayne Manor. That was where Flash had gone. Max remembered the movie vividly, how Barry sought out Bruce Wayne for help, only to find Thomas instead. And if Max's guess was right, that was where the speedster would be now. Trying to rebuild his speed. Trying to fix this. But Max had bigger concerns pressing at the edge of his thoughts. He leaned forward on the bird's back. Why did he remember the original timeline? He shouldn't. He wasn't native to this world. He wasn't part of its history. By all logic, when Barry rewrote the past, he should have rewritten Max too. Replaced him, erased him, or never let him arrive at all. And yet, here he was. Still intact, still aware, still himself. Am I an anomaly? Max thought, his expression tight behind the mask. Is that why I wasn't affected? Or is the system protecting me? Could be. Or maybe the reason he remembered the original timeline was because he was never part of it to begin with. Looking back at how he arrived in this world, no ID, no records, no past, it started to make a strange kind of sense. By all accounts, he shouldn't exist. He had no anchor in this reality. No past here, just now. If he had been part of this timeline, even in some small way, he should have been ripped away or rewritten when Barry Allen altered everything. And yet, he remained. It sounded insane, but the only explanation he could come up with was this: he wasn't bound to this world's timestream. That much was obvious. He was a transmigrator, a walking paradox. And still, despite all logic, he hadn't been ejected when Barry broke time. He was still here. Why? His eyes widened as a terrifying realization hit him. There is no other version of me in this world. If there had been a doppelganger, he would have been overridden or erased because unlike Barry or Thawne he wasn't protected by the Speed Force. Which could only mean one thing. He existed outside of the time stream because if he existed in it he would have caused a paradox the moment he arrived in this reality 7 months ago. Chapter 3. Barry and Thomas were deep in discussion, sketching out a plan to recreate the accident that gave Barry his powers, when Thomas suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He turned toward the doorway, eyes narrowed. "How long are you just going to watch?" he asked coldly. Footsteps echoed from the shadows. A man stepped into view, clad in a black cloak adorned with red clouds. An orange, spiraled mask hid his face. His voice was deep and calm, yet carried an undeniable edge. "Even in a different timeline, and a different Batman, you still maintain vigilance," the masked man said. "Though I guess I shouldn't be surprised. The name still stands. You are Batman." Thomas narrowed his eyes. He glanced at Barry. "Friend of yours?" Barry shook his head, eyes wide. "His name is Tobi, a vigilante from the original timeline. We weren't exactly allies, but we never clashed directly either." Then Barry turned to the masked figure, suspicion blooming across his face. "What puzzles me is, how do you know about the original timeline?" Tobi tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "You really are stupid," he said flatly. "No wonder you messed up the timeline." Barry flinched. "Batman just said you've been here a while. So you overheard us, makes sense," he added, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. Tobi said nothing at first, just stared silently. Then Barry's face twisted in confusion. "Wait, what do you mean I messed up the timeline? This is all Thawne's doing. Do you have proof of that?" Max asked calmly. Barry opened his mouth, paused, then sighed. "No. But it smells like him." Tobi let out a dry chuckle. "Then let's walk through it together." He stepped forward, slowly. "Tell me, Barry, what was the last thing you remember before all of this?" Barry frowned. "I remember running home, after stopping one of Thawne's schemes. He was trying to destroy the city. And before that, what did Thawne say to you?" Tobi asked. Barry hesitated. "He said I wasn't fast enough to save the people who matter to me." Tobi nodded. "And after that?" Barry's eyes dimmed. "Next thing I knew, I was walking beside my mom. And she was alive." Tobi's voice lowered, heavy with meaning. "So, the man who killed your mother taunts you about failing the ones you love, and right after, you're suddenly standing next to her." Batman's eyes narrowed, mind working fast. "Wait, you're saying Barry caused all this?" "Exactly," Max said. "You felt guilty," Batman added, growling. "Guilt and grief pushed you over the edge. In your despair, you ran back in time and saved your mother. You messed up the timeline." Barry looked stricken. "I didn't mean to, I just—" "You can reflect later," Max cut in. "Right now, we need to get your powers back. The world's falling apart, and I have no intention of going down with it." Barry stared at him, wary. "You're going to help?" "Of course I am," Max said. "This mess puts me in danger too." Batman stepped forward. "Can he be trusted?" Barry hesitated, eyes flicking between them. "I don't know, but right now, we need all the help we can get. Then we move, Batman said. There isn't much time. Some time later, Barry sat in the chair, wires and chemicals strapped to his back. A metal plate was fixed to his head, meant to conduct lightning directly into his body. This is a crazy idea, Batman muttered, arms folded. I know, Barry said with a shaky breath. But it's the only shot I have to recreate the accident that gave me the speed force. Max stepped forward, his arms crossed beneath his cloak. Stop stalling and just pull the lever. Batman shot him a glare but said nothing. With a grunt, he reached for the control and slammed the lever down. Thunder rumbled in the sky. Lightning flashed. A bolt struck the metal rod above, arcing straight down into Barry's body. Barry screamed as electricity surged through him, his muscles seizing violently. In an instant, his body ignited, chemicals reacting violently to the current. Barry, Batman shouted, but Max was already moving. He flicked his wrist, summoning the Gunbai Uchiha into his hand. With a single, powerful sweep, he conjured a controlled gust of wind that extinguished the flames in a heartbeat. Batman rushed forward and began unstrapping Barry, dragging his barely conscious body to the ground. Max followed, kneeling beside Barry and placing a gloved hand over his chest. A soft green glow radiated from his palm. Barry's burns, angry and raw, began to fade, skin knitting itself back together at an accelerated rate. Batman narrowed his eyes. So, you're a magician. Max didn't even glance at him. No, I'm just built different. Batman's scowl deepened. That healing, it's not natural. His burns were already healing, Max said coolly. I just sped up the process. Barry coughed weakly, eyes fluttering open. His body still trembled from the shock, but the worst of the damage was gone. Welcome back, Flash, Max muttered, standing up and letting the gunbai disappear with a puff of smoke. I now remember things from this timeline, Barry said, sitting up slowly. His voice was shaky, like how Aquaman destroyed Europe by flooding it. Max gave him a steady look. Your memories are starting to overlap, he said calmly. And soon, you'll start forgetting the original timeline altogether. Barry's eyes widened. Then I need to go. I need to fix this, now. You won't be fast enough, Max said flatly. Not with Thawne around. Barry froze. Wait, Thawne is here too. How do you know? You said it yourself, Max replied. He's the opposite of you. He's also connected to the Speed Force. So when you traveled back in time, you dragged him with you. Batman's eyes narrowed. Then we need to find him, and terminate him. Max turned toward him, a chuckle rumbling from behind his mask. I like this Batman better. Things are already starting to change because of my presence, Max thought as he stood silently, watching Barry recover. In the original timeline, it took him 2 tries to regain the Speed Force. But now, it happened on the first. He narrowed his eye behind the mask, processing the implications. I've already disrupted the sequence. His gaze drifted slightly, though no one noticed. I wonder what my clone is doing right now. Before leaving the city, Max had created a wood clone, and sent it ahead with a single mission, find Thawne, and kill him if possible. Lois Lane sprinted down the ruined street, arrows whistling past her, one missing her by a hair's breadth. This is Lois Lane from the Daily Planet, she said breathlessly into her dying mic, my battery's about to give out, and I might be joining it soon. Behind her, armored footsteps thundered closer. 4 Amazon warriors chased her, bows drawn and blades gleaming in the firelight. Behind them, something much worse roared, a massive 3-headed beast, the Cerberus. Lois dove over a jagged chunk of collapsed road and scrambled beneath a broken bridge, breathing hard. There, leaning casually against the wall like he was waiting for a bus, stood a man in a black cloak covered in red clouds. His face was obscured by an orange spiral-patterned mask. She froze. Who are you? The masked man straightened, his voice calm and steady. An ally. Get behind me, Miss Lane. Lois hesitated, but the urgency in his tone left no room for doubt. She stepped behind him as the warrior clone of Max walked forward. 4 Amazons appeared on either side of the bridge, bows raised. Then came the heavy stomping of the Cerberus as it leapt onto the shattered road in front of them, all 3 heads snarling with fury. Max's visible eye shifted, morphing into the ominous red swirl of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He raised his hands into a ram seal. A sudden gust of wind swept through the area. Then, crackling into existence, a towering blue ethereal warrior formed around him and Lois, its translucent frame radiating power. The chakra construct smashed through the bridge above, sending concrete flying as the Amazons scattered in panic. The Susanoo, complete with 4 arms, each wielding a massive glowing blue sword, rose to its full height, with Max and Lois suspended within its armored chest cavity. "Amazons, attack!" shouted the lead warrior. Arrows flew. Blades clashed. The Cerberus charged with a feral roar. Max stared down at them from within the Susanoo. "Brave," he muttered. "I respect that, but stupid, nonetheless." The Susanoo moved. With a single wide slash, 2 of its glowing blades swept across the battlefield, throwing Amazons through the air like ragdolls, while bisecting others in brutal arcs of chakra force. The Cerberus lunged. The Susanoo dropped one of its swords and clenched its free hand into a massive blue fist, then drove it forward with explosive force. Crack! One of the Cerberus' heads crumpled as the beast was launched backward, crashing into a burning building with a deafening impact. Max's clone moved through a rapid sequence of hand seals. Fire style, majestic demolisher flames. He puffed his chest and exhaled a raging torrent of fire, sweeping across the remaining Amazons. Screams echoed briefly before silence took their place. The jutsu faded, leaving scorched ground and blackened armor behind. The Susanoo shimmered, then slowly began to dissipate. Max and Lois floated gently back to the ground. Dust and ash filled the air. Lois, wide-eyed and shaken, looked around at the devastation. "What are you?" The masked clone glanced sideways at her. "Like I said, an ally." Chapter 4. Clone Max turned his head slightly, his eye narrowing behind the mask. "Aren't you gonna show up already?" he asked aloud. Lois blinked. "Who?" He pointed behind her. "Them." She turned quickly, and froze. From the shadows behind the collapsed bridge, figures emerged, some human, some not. "It's the Resistance," she whispered in shock. "Grifter, GI, robot, Hyde, Canterbury Cricket, and some kind of demon." Grifter stepped forward first, dual pistols holstered at his sides. He wore a red mask and a tan trench coat, casual and dangerous all at once. "Relax," he said with a cocky grin. "We're on your side." GI, robot, towering and metallic, thudded forward behind him. His cold, glowing eyes scanned Max and Lois with mechanical precision, a massive chain gun mounted on his arm. Beside him was Hyde, massive, hulking, and grotesque, with gray skin and twitching muscles. A blood-stained coat barely hung over his frame as he grunted like a feral beast trying to be civil. Canterbury Cricket skittered along the rubble. His spindly limbs twitched as he adjusted his armor, a strange mix of medieval and insect-like design. His glowing green eyes blinked from under a cracked cricket-like helm. And finally, stepping out last, was Etrigan the demon, towering, red-skinned, and snarling, flames flickering from his mouth. "Do you really want me to say your name before you show yourself?" Clone Max asked flatly, his eye narrowing beneath the mask. A sudden blur of yellow lightning zipped in from behind the rubble near where the Resistance had gathered. A man in a yellow suit with red glowing eyes came to a halt, grinning wickedly. The Resistance startled, immediately raising their weapons. Grifter drew his pistols, Canterbury Cricket leapt into a defensive stance, Hyde growled low, and Etrigan's eyes began to glow with fire. Max's visible eye narrowed. "Thon, who?" Lois asked, still catching her breath. "Him," Max Clone replied dryly, pointing. Lois glanced between the two, exasperated. "You really need to work on your delivery." Thon chuckled. "Well, it seems I've been discovered. I suppose Barry told you everything about me. Then you know what needs to be done to end this," Max said, stepping forward slightly. Thon sneered. "Don't think it'll be that easy." Before anyone could react, Thon vanished in a crackling flash of yellow, reappearing right in front of Max with a punch aimed straight at his face. Max barely moved, tilting his head to the side. The fist grazed his mask, nicking the edge, just enough to leave a scratch. Max's eye suddenly shifted, morphing from the eternal Mangekyo into the cold ripple of the Rinnegan. Shinra Tensai. A powerful gravitational blast erupted from Max's hand, slamming into Thon's abdomen like a freight train. The speedster was launched backwards, flipping through the air before skidding facefirst across the ground, tearing up chunks of asphalt. He rolled to a stop, groaning, and looked up just in time to see 4 missiles rocketing toward him. Shit! He blinked away in a flash of speed just as the explosives detonated in a deafening roar, blowing apart the rubble where he had landed. As the smoke cleared, Grifter opened fire, bullets streaking toward Thon's afterimage. The reverse flash snarled. "Not worth it," he hissed, and in a burst of lightning, he vanished. "Well, he's gone," Grifter said. "His name is Eobard Thon," Max's clone said, retracting his missile-launching arm back to normal with a quiet clank. He flexed his fingers, using the Asura path still felt unnatural, even now. Nice trick. You a cyborg, like Cyborg? Grifter asked. That's irrelevant, Max's clone replied flatly, turning away. Where are you going? Lois asked, stepping forward. I'm heading to where Thawne will be, he said without looking back. And it would be wise not to follow me. Hey, we might need someone like you, Grifter called out. But I don't need you, Max's clone shot back, before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Cocky bastard, Grifter muttered, then motioned to the others. Let's move while we still can. Back at Wayne Manor, we still need help. In my memories of this timeline, a meteor struck a city, Barry said. Metropolis. 30 years ago, Batman clarified. Barry nodded. That's the same day Superman arrived in our timeline, he added, gesturing toward Max. Sometime later, the three stood atop a tall building, gazing down into a massive crater that had swallowed the heart of the city. So this never happened in your world? Batman asked, glancing at Barry and Max. Barry now wore his full Flash suit, arms crossed. No, Max answered. In our world, he landed on a farm. A couple in Kansas took him in as a baby. Barry turned, narrowing his eyes at Max. How do you know that? I know a lot of things, Max replied calmly. You're not from this timeline, are you? Barry asked, already knowing the answer. Correct. And why I know the original timeline isn't important right now, Max said. Barry looked at him a moment longer, then nodded. I'll trust your word, for now. If you two are done, Batman interjected, we still have your space baby to find. Barry let the subject drop and turned to Bruce. Where's your contact? He's on his way, Batman replied, just as mechanical hums filled the air. They looked up to see Cyborg descending from the sky with a group of aerial drones, landing with a metallic clang. I wasn't expecting your call, Cyborg said, stepping forward. Cyborg, Barry said with a grin. Vic, you look different. Barry, time, Max interrupted. Oh, right, sorry, I go by Flash, Barry added. Cyborg blinked. Have we met? He's new, calls himself Flash, super speed, Batman said. Then he gestured to Max. His name's Tobi, and he's. You'll find out on the way, Max cut in, his tone sharp. You still need a strategist, someone who can pull together a team. Batman asked, arms folded. Yes, Cyborg replied, badly. Then I'll do it, Batman said. But on my terms. I've already picked two candidates, Tobi and Flash. Cyborg raised an eyebrow. All right, but what's the mission? We need your help locating an alien that crash-landed in Metropolis, Batman said. An alien? Cyborg asked. The meteor that hit here decades ago, it's not what the government led people to believe, Batman explained. Cyborg's eyes glowed as he activated his scanners. I'm picking something up, but my systems are being jammed. Someone doesn't want me seeing what's under that crater. Then we go there, Max said flatly. He stepped forward and slammed a palm into the rooftop. Summoning jutsu, he muttered. In a puff of smoke, a massive bird with green feathers, a yellow beak and strange metallic rods protruding from its neck appeared, its purple ringed eyes glaring. Barry stepped back. You know magic, sort of, Max replied, deliberately vague. Cyborg blinked. Okay, that's new. Hop on, Max said. Hold on tight. Batman and Barry exchanged a look before nodding and climbing onto the bird's back. Cyborg activated his thrusters, floating beside them. The summoned beast let out a distorted screech and took off into the sky, cutting through the air like a black missile toward the heart of the crater. They descended in silence, wind whipping past them until the giant bird touched down within the vast crater. Max stepped off first and dismissed the creature in a puff of smoke. Neat trick for travel, Batman muttered, his cape fluttering behind him. They walked through the desolate crater, boots crunching against ash and fractured debris. Eventually, Cyborg stopped near a barely visible hatch embedded in the ground. Found something, he said, forcing the panel open. He dropped inside without hesitation, the others following. The interior was sterile and dark, illuminated only by Cyborg's glowing circuits. He hacked door after door, bypassing each security protocol with practiced ease until they reached a massive blast door, emblazoned with the symbol of the House of L. Just as Cyborg moved to hack it, Max raised a hand. I got this. A sudden hum filled the air as a blue, ethereal skeletal arm formed at Max's side, an incomplete but terrifying fragment of a Susano. It reeled back and slammed into the blast door, tearing it from its hinges with a thunderous crash. Barry winced. And there goes our element of surprise. They already knew we were here, Max replied calmly, gesturing toward the chamber beyond. Inside, illuminated by harsh overhead lights, was a frail and withered figure lying against the far wall, skin pale, bones visible beneath thin flesh, eyes barely open. Barry's voice caught in his throat. Superman. The room fell silent, the weight of what they saw anchoring everyone in place. Chapter 5. Cyborg stepped closer and gently tapped the frail man's shoulder. Clark flinched violently, shrinking back in fear. "This is the strongest man on the planet?" Batman asked grimly. Clark looked up, hollow eyes searching their faces. "Help me." "Easy there, buddy. We're your friends," Cyborg said softly. "Friends?" Clark whispered, voice cracking. "Yes," Barry said, stepping forward. "I'm your friend. And Cyborg, he's your friend too." Max didn't look back. "We don't have time for this. The guards will be here any second." Without hesitation, Barry lifted Clark into a fireman's carry. His heart ached at how light Superman felt in his arms, like carrying a dying bird. They moved out, Cyborg leading the way as door after door was bypassed. Batman followed, then Max, ever watchful. "This has to be a rogue operation," Cyborg muttered. "It's too inhumane, even for the government." Max scoffed, eyes cold. "No. The government is this rotten. We should have left him," Batman said flatly. "He was safer in there than exposed out here." "We need to get him to the sun," Barry insisted, breath short as they reached the tunnel exit. Blinding daylight awaited at the tunnel's end, but so did something else. Boats bristling with mounted Gatling guns floated just offshore, surrounded by armed soldiers. A voice barked from a loudspeaker, "Stand down. You are trespassing on government property. Surrender, or we will open fire." Barry flinched. Clark whimpered in his arms. "This is wrong," Cyborg growled. "They used him like a lab rat." Max had heard enough. As the soldiers opened fire, he moved. In an instant, a massive blue Susano exploded into being around him, its ribcage shielding the group as bullets clanged uselessly off its surface. The construct raised one glowing, skeletal hand and conjured a blade of pure chakra. With a roar of force, it slashed down at the water. The wave it created surged forward, smashing into the boats. Metal twisted, men screamed, chaos erupted. Startled by the gunfire and panic, Clark, eyes wide and instinct screaming, launched himself into the sky and disappeared into the clouds, fleeing faster than anyone could react. But Barry didn't celebrate. Instead, he dropped to one knee, clutching his head. "Barry!" Cyborg shouted, moving toward him. Barry gasped, trembling. His breathing quickened. "No, memories, too many, they're colliding." "He's merging with his Flashpoint self," Batman muttered, grim. "The timelines are bleeding into each other." Max clenched his fists, watching Barry struggle. He felt a weight settle in his chest. "We need to get out of here," Batman ordered. Max didn't move for a beat. Then he nodded. He was getting tired of all the delays. But he couldn't leave Barry behind. Not now. Because things weren't going like the movie anymore. This world was shifting, and if Barry died before fixing the timeline, then Max would be trapped in this collapsing hell forever. Some time later, inside Batman's private jet, the cabin was quiet save for the soft hum of engines and the occasional rattle of turbulence. Barry, Max, and Batman sat strapped in as they sped toward London, the final battleground. The city had become a powder keg, with Atlanteans, Amazons, and remnants of government forces all converging for a last, brutal confrontation. In the cargo hold, the 6 children destined to form Shazam were resting. They had no idea what was waiting for them ahead. Max sat by the window, his expression unreadable. It was his first time on a plane, let alone a private jet, and while he could admit it was impressive, the turbulence still made him a little uneasy. "Flying on my bird would have been smoother," he thought. Batman broke the silence from the cockpit, voice clipped and focused. "I've been scanning communications from Europe. Intercepted a report from a spy embedded with the Resistance. She smuggled this out before going dark." A screen lowered from the ceiling and flickered to life. It showed grainy footage, smoke and ruins in the background. At the center of the chaos stood Eobard Thawne, flanked by Resistance fighters, and someone else. Wearing a familiar mask, T. Thawne, Barry said, leaning forward. "But, what the hell? Tobi's been with us the whole time." "That's my clone," Max said calmly. Barry jumped, startled as Max appeared behind him without a sound. I sent him out the moment I landed in Gotham, Max continued. His job was to track Thawne and kill him. Barry blinked, and Max folded his arms, staring at the paused image of his clone and Thawne standing off. Judging from this, it didn't work. Batman's eyes narrowed. If Thawne's still alive, he's still manipulating this timeline. And your clone may have made things worse by alerting him. He already knew someone like me was here, Max said. Suddenly, the jet's radar blared to life, an incoming threat. Bang! Water cannons slammed into the wing, tearing through metal. The entire jet shook violently before it began to plummet. I've lost control, Batman shouted, gripping the controls. Hang on, Barry yelled, then spun his arms rapidly. Miniature tornadoes formed beneath the jet, slowing its descent as it crashed into a scorched field outside London's war-torn remains. Before the jet even came to a full stop, Max punched through the hull and leapt out. The others followed close behind, shaken but alive. The chaos hit them instantly. Screams, cannon fire, inhuman roars, and booming explosions echoed from the battlefield not far off. Smoke blanketed the sky as if London itself was being devoured by war. Max stared toward the epicenter of the conflict, then turned to Barry. I'm leaving a clone with you. Wait, we still need to find Thawne. Where are you going? Barry said urgently. To release some pent-up aggression, of course, Max replied, a hint of a smirk tugging at his lips. A wood clone split cleanly from his body, its eyes already scanning the horizon. I'll leave him in your capable hands, Max added. With that, he jumped off into the distance, landing silently atop a crumbling building that overlooked the battlefield. From his perch, he saw them, Aquaman and Wonder Woman, locked in a brutal clash in the heart of the carnage. Lightning flashed above them, tidal waves clashed against scorched earth. Max crossed his arms. I gave you one simple task, and what did you do? He muttered. With a swirl of leaves, his clone appeared beside him, looking a bit sheepish. Sorry, boss, Clone Max said, rubbing the back of his neck. I couldn't kill Thawne. Bastard was too fast. Max didn't even look at him. You were busy flexing instead of getting the job done, you useless little shit. His voice was cold. Begone from my sight. Go make yourself useful. Clone Max saluted with mock enthusiasm. Aye, boss. Then his expression hardened as he activated his humanoid Susano, cloaking himself in crackling blue energy and descending toward the battlefield like a demonic war god. Max remained on the rooftop, eyes narrowed. His true fight hadn't started yet. Thawne was still out there, and Max would be the one to end him. The ground trembled, then exploded in a shockwave of power as the Susano slammed into the earth. Boom! Everything stopped. The fighting, the screaming, even the cannon fire. All eyes turned to the massive, glowing titan standing in the heart of the battlefield, a towering, blue spectral warrior with 4 colossal arms, each one radiating raw energy. Inside its armored core stood Clone Max, eyes cold, unwavering. The Susano raised its 4 arms in a synchronized motion. With a burst of chakra, it conjured 4 massive ethereal blades, each one crackling with deadly power. Thud, thud, thud. Its footsteps sent tremors through the war-torn streets of London as it marched forward, straight toward Aquaman. Arthur gritted his teeth and spun his trident of Poseidon, readying himself. The Susano raised one of its swords high and brought it crashing down like a falling mountain. Clong! Aquaman caught the blade with his trident, muscles straining, sparks erupting, but the pressure was overwhelming. His knees buckled, cracks formed in the ground beneath him. With a guttural growl, Aquaman was forced to the ground, held down by raw might. Before Clone Max could deliver the finishing blow, a blur of red and gold streaked through the air, Wonder Woman. With a fierce cry, she drove her sword toward the core of the Susano, aiming to strike him directly. But Clone Max's reaction was instant. One of the Susano's massive arms lashed out, backhanding her midair. Thoom! She was sent hurtling across the battlefield, crashing through 2 buildings and tearing through a stone wall before disappearing in a cloud of dust and rubble. The battlefield fell silent once again, staring in awe, horror, and disbelief. Inside the Susano, Clone Max chuckled. Know your place. The Susano took another thunderous step forward, blades raised. The gods of this world were about to learn fear. Chapter 6. The Atlanteans, enraged at the sight of their king being overpowered, roared in unison. Protect the king. Magical bolts, plasma cannons, water pressure blasters, every weapon fired at once, hammering the towering blue Susano from all sides. But the onslaught did nothing. The attack sparked off its glowing armor like firecrackers against a fortress. From the other side, a shrill Amazonian battle cry echoed through the crumbling cityscape. Amazons, for our queen! The warriors of Themyscira charged, blades drawn, aiming for the towering warrior in the center. Inside the spectral titan, Clone Max didn't even flinch. Arthur, seizing the distraction, tried to flee. But the Susanoo's eyes flashed. "Where exactly do you think you're going?" Clone Max asked coldly. The Susanoo raised one of its colossal blades and slashed down. Arthur barely dodged, flipping to the side and hurling his trident like a spear, aimed directly at Clone Max inside the chakra construct. The golden trident pierced deep into the Susanoo's chestplate, stopping inches from Clone Max's face. "Damn," he muttered inwardly. That was close. Before he could react further, Arthur came flying in, foot extended to drive the trident deeper. But the Susanoo's hand moved like lightning. Crunch. It snatched Arthur midair, fingers curling around him like a cage of doom. Pressure mounted. Arthur groaned in pain. "This is really disappointing," Clone Max said, amused. "I expected more from the high and mighty king of Atlantis." "Who are you?" Arthur growled, breath ragged, as his bones groaned beneath the crushing grip. "Oh, me," Clone Max smirked. "Just a surface dweller. Isn't that what you call us?" The Susanoo's grip tightened. Crack. Arthur's scream was guttural as his hands shattered under the pressure. "If you think I'll surrender, just kill me now." Arthur spat. "I will never bend. Atlanteans, press the attack, kill every surface dweller and the witches." Clone Max raised a brow. "You've got it entirely wrong." He lowered the Susanoo's hand, and slammed Arthur into the concrete with a sickening thud. The ghostly palm remained over its size, making him look like a bug. "I don't want your surrender. I want you to resist," Clone Max said, voice devoid of mercy. "That way, what I do next, it'll seem justified." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming behind the chakra construct. "But even if you did surrender, it wouldn't change your people's fate. Killing you first would be mercy for all the innocent people you have killed." He smirked. "Because I want you to be the last to die so you can watch them all perish and there is nothing you can do to stop it." Crack. The ground erupted nearby. Wonder Woman launched herself from the rubble, landing on the rooftop opposite the towering Susanoo, sword gleaming, eyes aflame. "Who are you, warrior?" she demanded. Clone Max tilted his head. "I'm whatever you'd like to interpret me as." "Then it seems I need to teach you some manners," she shouted, diving in. "By all means," he replied calmly. Below, the battlefield descended into chaos. The Amazons and Atlanteans swarmed the Susanoo, weapons clashing, war cries echoing. But their attacks were futile. The Susanoo did not falter. From a distance, the resistance watched the war unfold. "Is it even a question?" Grifter scoffed. "Tobi's got this under control. He's not even personally there," Lois said, eyes wide. Grifter pointed to a rooftop in the distance. There, standing calmly in the wind, was the real Max. Just as they spotted him, he flicked his wrist, and a war fan materialized in his hand. Without hesitation, he leapt from the building, straight into the fray. "Just how many abilities does this guy have?" Lois asked, still staring at the chaos below. "No idea," Grifter muttered, watching the Susanoo swat aside both Atlantean and Amazonian elite like rag dolls. "But he really is a Ownman army." Lois shook her head in disbelief. "And he's not even breaking a sweat." Grifter's eyes narrowed behind his mask. "Yeah, even if he's got it all under control, we've still got a score to settle for our fallen comrades." He slung his rifle onto his shoulder, cocked it, and stepped to the edge of the rooftop. "I still have some hate to lay." And with that, he jumped down into the fray. The others looked at each other, nodded, and followed behind him. "All right, here's the plan," Max Clone 2 said, glancing between Batman and Barry. "Thon's going to come for you, Barry, he always does. It's his style. He wants to break you down, humiliate you. But if he senses I'm around, he might hesitate or not show at all." He pointed to Barry. "That's why you Batman and Cyborg will wait here as bait. I'll stay hidden in plain sight and strike when the time's right and also try to act normal." "You sure he's going to show up?" Cyborg asked, arms folded, eyes scanning the empty alleyway. He'd been briefed on the mess this timeline was, and none of it sounded predictable. "He should," Batman said, tone grim. "From the type of bastard he is, this would be the perfect moment." "All right, here we go," Max Clone 2 nodded, and with a puff of smoke, transformed into a solid rock, plopping to the ground with a soft thud. Did he just? Barry blinked. You know what? Barry said, walking over and nudging the rock with his foot. I'm not even surprised anymore. It actually feels solid. Stick to the script, Barry, Cyborg said, sighing as he double-checked the perimeter with his scanners. In a blur of lightning, Thon appeared in front of the group, sipping from a steaming cup of coffee like it was just another casual morning. Hello, Barry, he said with a smug grin. I really like what you've done with the place. Barry's fists clenched. This is because of you. Me, Thon chuckled, waving a finger. No, 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 this is all you, Barry. He took another sip, then leaned forward mockingly. You just missed your mommy so bad. You bastard, Barry shouted, launching himself at Thon with a full-speed punch. But Thon was faster. He casually sidestepped and clubbed Barry across the face, sending him crashing to the side. Batman didn't hesitate. Dual pistols out, he opened fire. Cyborg followed, blasting his cannon straight at Thon. But the yellow blur vanished, gone in a flash. A split second later, Barry was gone too, chasing after him as the two speedsters clashed, fists and lightning flying, their blows cracking through the air faster than the eye could see. As Barry and Thon vanished in a blur of lightning and chaos, Max Clone 2 reappeared, shifting back from the unassuming rock form with a low hum of chakra. He was listening to our conversation the whole time, Max Clone 2 said calmly. Cyborg's eyes widened. What? But I scanned the entire perimeter, twice. There was no trace of him. Doesn't matter, Batman cut in, voice cold. We know now. What's the real plan? Not that I'd mind improvising. Max Clone 2 turned to him, serious. Leave Thon to me and Barry. He's too fast for you. You'd only get in the way. Focus on evacuating the resistance fighters, now. Because I'm about to bring hell to this place. And with that, he vanished into thin air, gone without a sound. Batman looked at Cyborg. You heard him. Cyborg nodded grimly. Let's move. As the real Max landed, Black Manta, fresh from blasting an Amazon with his plasma beam, turned toward him and fired. Max didn't flinch. He raised his gunby fan casually, absorbing the beam into its surface, the weapon glowing a furious red. Uchiha reflection, Max said coldly. The stored energy discharged instantly, the redirected blast screaming back at Manta. He barely dodged in time, only to turn around and catch Max's fan square in the face. His helmet shattered with a metallic crack, blood erupting from his nose and mouth as he was violently flung through the air. Before Manta could recover, Max landed on his back with both feet, driving the air from his lungs in a pained gasp. His eyes bulged, and he gagged hard. An Amazon lunged in from Max's left, sword raised. Without hesitation, Max stepped off Manta, grabbed him by the ankle, and hurled his body like a club. The Amazon's blade cut through Manta midair, slicing him in half, only to keep charging straight at Max. Grinning behind his mask, Max met her head-on. His gunby swung with devastating force. The Amazon blocked, but severely underestimated his strength. She was launched like a ragdoll, crashing into a stone wall with a sickening crunch. More Amazons rushed him. Max dismissed his fan mid-stride, opting for bare fists. One warrior slashed. Max ducked low, slamming an uppercut into her chin that launched her clean off the ground. He followed with a spinning kick to her gut, sending her flying and disarming her midair. As her sword flew free, Max flipped, kicked it with pinpoint accuracy, and sent it whistling like a bullet, straight into the head of another Amazon who'd just drawn her bow. The blade buried deep into her skull, cutting her cry short. Before her corpse even dropped, Max landed midspin, using her body like a springboard to crush another Amazon's skull beneath his heel. He launched upward again, flipping midair and came crashing down like a meteor, creating a shockwave that blasted away the enemy soldiers too close to him, scattering them like leaves before a storm. Chapter 7. Before the dance of death even began, an Atlantean soldier lunged, aiming a kick at Max's face. Max stepped aside effortlessly, letting the foot swing past him. In the same motion, he drove a fist into the soldier's gut, sending him flying backward, blood trailing from his mouth. A spear flew at Max from the side, grazing his cheek. He leaned with it, pain ignored, and snatched it mid-flight, then swept it in a wide arc, impaling two Amazon warriors through their abdomens with one savage move. Without pause, he hurled the bloodied spear upward, striking down an archer perched on a rooftop. Two more Amazons charged from either side. Max jumped, legs snapping outward, a split kick that caught them both in the face, knocking them out cold before he even landed. As his boots hit the dirt, he rolled forward and grabbed a fallen sword, just in time to deflect an axe flying at him. It was thrown by a strange creature, part man, part fish, who let out a war cry and rushed him. Max smirked beneath the mask. An Adolescent lunged on his flank, dagger flashing. Max casually leaned aside, narrowly avoiding the stab. Then the soldiers went for a jab to the face. Max caught its arm, and snapped it like a twig. The dagger flew from the soldier's hand, and Max caught it midair, only to hurl it right at the creature. The fish man that had been charging at him tilted his head, barely dodging, but that was a mistake. The dagger exploded. Max had attached an explosive tag to it. The blast sent the creature tumbling away in smoke and flame. Before Max could even breathe, a volley of arrows rained down on where he stood. He flipped back, again and again, dodging them with inhuman grace. His eyes snapped upward as a yellow plasma blast hurtled toward him. He instantly summoned his gunbai, catching the beam with its surface. The force pushed him backward as he flipped through the air, landing in a crouch, his boots skidding across cracked pavement. The attack faded. Max dismissed the fan. He stood tall, then casually patted the dust off his cloak. Orm stood tall, his trident humming with raw energy. Without a word, he turned and blasted a monstrous beast charging toward them, vaporizing its skull in a single, thunderous beam. "I must admit, surface dweller," Orm said coolly, his voice echoing with disdain, "your combat skills are impressive. But this is where it ends." With a flick of his wrist, he fired another blast directly at Max. Max sidestepped the beam in a blur and raised a single hand in a seal. Fire style, majestic destroyer flames. A colossal wall of fire, wide as a tidal wave and tall as a fortress, erupted from his mouth, engulfing the battlefield in searing heat. Orm's eyes widened. He slammed his trident down, summoning a towering wave of water to counter the blaze. The two elements collided, fire and water clashing with explosive force, blanketing the battlefield in a choking cloud of steam. Through the haze, Max dropped to one knee and slammed his palm into the ground. Poof, poof, poof. One by one, monstrous figures appeared around him in bursts of smoke. A three-headed dog, its snarling mouths chained by black rods jutting from its snout. A giant green bird, its neck pierced with jet-black receivers. A massive ox, muscles bulging and eyes glowing with malice. A rhino, armored and unstoppable. A colossal centipede, its many legs churning the ground. A chameleon, its tail a writhing snake. All of them bore the Rinnegan. Max's voice was calm, almost amused beneath the mask. "Crush him." The summons roared and charged forward in unison, shaking the ground beneath them. Max turned his head toward a distant clash of lightning and red energy, the battle between Barry and Thawne, and narrowed his eyes. Without another word, he vanished in a flicker of movement. Cyborg and Batman landed amidst the chaos, plasma fire crackling and debris raining from above. Smoke curled around them as they pressed forward, dodging rubble and fallen soldiers. They spotted Grifter, his dual pistols blazing as he held off a squad of Atlantean shock troops. "You're Grifter, right?" Cyborg called out, blasting a drone from the sky with his arm cannon. Grifter ducked behind cover and fired a burst. "Yeah, and what's with you? The government send you to grab me now of all times?" "No, we're here on behalf of Tobi," Cyborg said. "He told us to relay a message." Batman stepped up beside him, voice cold and direct. "Evacuate, immediately. If you stay here, you die." Grifter paused for a beat, eyes narrowing behind his mask. "What's that lunatic planning now? Isn't it enough that he's got some war god tearing through both sides like tissue paper?" "We've delivered the warning," Batman said flatly. "What happens next is your choice." The two vanished into the smoke, moving with precise purpose. Grifter growled and tapped his comm. "All resistance members, pull back. I repeat, pull back now." He kept firing, retreating step by step. "Damn it, Tobi, what the hell are you about to unleash?" He looked back at the battlefield. The ground trembled. Cries of battle were drowned out by the deafening thunder of titanic footsteps as Max's summoned beasts rampaged across the war-torn battlefield. Orm snarled, his staff glowing bright as he fired blast after blast at the charging rhinoceros summon, each shot slamming into its hide with little effect. The beast roared in defiance, charging through the blasts. Then, impact. Orm was gored clean off his feet and flung into the air like a ragdoll. Across the field, the three-headed dog, its snarling maws dripping with blood, faced off against the monstrous Cerberus, the Amazon's own warbeast. The clash was brief, brutal, each head fought with coordinated fury, and in a flash of snapping jaws and gushing blood, Max's summon tore into the Cerberus's neck. The great beast collapsed, twitching, before going still. The Reneganid monsters were tearing through legions. And despite the bad blood between them, Amazons and Atlanteans now fought side by side, their fear of Max's summons outweighing their hatred for one another. In the thick of the chaos, Clone Max won locked blades with Wonder Woman as he had dispersed his Susanoo, their duel a brutal dance of speed and strength. Then it started. Soldiers, both Amazon and Atlantean, screamed. One by one, they were yanked into the air by an unseen force, their bodies twisting, flailing, then vanishing, leaving no trace. Grifter watched in disbelief, ducking behind a ruined barricade as a giant centipede with Rinnegan eyes crushed a squad of Amazon archers beneath its chitinous bulk. Yeah, definitely Tobi's freak show, he muttered, eyes narrowing behind his mask. He remembered those eyes, haunting, purple, rippling with power, from the last time they'd crossed paths. Back then, he'd only seen a glimpse of what Tobi could do. Now, he was watching an army of monsters with those same eyes tear through soldiers and monsters alike. Each creature, be it the three-headed hound, the invisible chameleon, or the towering ox, radiated that same oppressive aura. There was no mistaking it. They were his. Meanwhile, Max's first clone stood before Wonder Woman, who was breathing heavily, her armor scorched and dented, her sword dripping with blood. So tell me, Diana, Clone Max said calmly, twirling two kunai in his hands, did you really kill Mara out of self-defense, or was it to eliminate the competition for Arthur's affection? Diana's eyes narrowed. I did what I had to do to protect myself, she said, then launched at him in a blur of divine fury. Steel clashed with chakra-forged metal as they exchanged vicious blows, the air crackling with tension. Even as they fought, Clone Max spoke, his voice cool, surgical. You neither deny nor confirm it, which means it could be both. He blocked a powerful downward strike and twisted under her guard. But you know what I think, he continued, dodging a punch and slashing across her bracer. I think your pride couldn't stand the idea of sharing Arthur. Your royal standing, your belief in your own moral superiority, none of it could handle being second. Diana let out a furious cry, but he didn't stop. So when Mara attacked, you didn't hesitate. You saw your chance, and you made it look justified. Chapter 8. She came at me with lethal intent, so I did the same, Diana said coldly, leaping back. She bit off more than she could chew. And I don't like letting threats linger. Clone Max tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I guess we're alike in that aspect. But let's not pretend, it wasn't just survival. You had the power to suppress her, subdue her, but you went for the kill. Straight for the neck, beheaded her. He took a slow step forward, voice mocking. And then you wore her tiara like a trophy. That, princess, is what broke Arthur. He might have had you on the side, but he loved his wife. Diana's eyes blazed with fury. Watch your words, or I'll cut out that tongue. Clone Max laughed darkly. I thought we already established. That's beyond your power. She lunged in a blur, sword swinging, but he sidestepped with ease, seized her wrist, and in one fluid motion, conjured a black chakra rod and drove it into her abdomen. Diana gasped, blood spurting from her mouth, just before Clone Max's knee smashed into her chin, sending her crashing to the ground. Before she could move, he conjured more black rods, impaling her hands and pinning her to the war-torn earth. Steam and chaos surrounded them, but in that moment, all was still. He looked up and smirked. Oh, how nice of you to join us again, King Arthur. I thought you'd be out for a little bit longer. I will not fall, not until all surface dwellers and that witch are eliminated, Arthur growled, limping forward. His right arm hung mangled at his side, his trident awkwardly clutched under his armpit as it dragged across the dirt. Clone Max turned slowly, an amused glint in his eye. Big words for a man who was knocking on death's door a few minutes ago. I must have rattled something loose in that thick skull of yours, maybe even a little common sense. Because if I were you, I'd have turned tail the moment I had the chance. Though, I doubt you'd have gotten far. Arthur narrowed his eyes. Who are you? Where did you come from? Max tilted his head. I've answered far too many questions today already. But here's one I would have answered, had you asked, what am I going to do with you now? He paused, a dark grin forming. But since you didn't ask, I'll tell you anyway. I'm going to kill every last one of your kin. Diana opened her mouth to speak, do your worst, but was cut off by Clone Max stomping his foot down hard on the back of her head, slamming her face into the ground. Arthur roared and surged forward, gripping his trident, hoping to strike Max while his attention was diverted. But thick, thorny vines erupted from the earth, coiling around his legs and torso, halting him mid-charge. "All you had to do was keep quiet," Clone Max said coldly. He walked up to Arthur, summoned a black rod from his sleeve, and plunged it into the Atlantean's shoulder. Arthur let out a sharp grunt of pain. Without pause, Max swept his leg forward and kicked both his knees in with brutal precision. Arthur screamed, finally collapsing. "This should have been a war between Atlanteans and Amazons," Max hissed, crouching down to meet Arthur's gaze. "But no, you dragged innocent people into it. Millions are dead, and as we speak, you bastard, you're planning to nuke the entire continent." Max then walked over to Diana, staring down at her beaten face. Her lip was split, blood dripped from her nose and forehead, her eyes dazed but defiant. "I blame you more than anyone for all of this," he said coldly. Without hesitation, he pulled out a kunai and stabbed it into both of her calves. She cried out in agony. Then, methodically, he removed the black rods from her pinned hands. Blood pooled beneath her, but he showed no care or concern. Grabbing a fistful of her hair, he yanked her to her feet, barely, and began dragging her toward Arthur. The vines holding Arthur suddenly receded, slithering back into the ground as if obeying an unspoken command. Max reached down and seized Arthur by his hair as well. Dragging both of them behind him, like trophies of war, Max Clone 1 stepped outside, toward whatever horror came next. Meanwhile, Barry and Thon blurred across the battlefield, exchanging furious blows. The air cracked with the force of their speed, but eventually, Thon gained the upper hand. With a wicked grin, he materialized behind Barry and drove a jagged metal pole through his thigh. "Aargh!" Barry screamed, falling to one knee. "You know what's beautiful about all this, Barry," Thon said, crouching beside him with smug satisfaction. He gestured to the chaos around them, the fires, the ruined cityscape, the bloodied heroes. "This is all you." He stood up and chuckled darkly. "And that orange-masked freak, Tobi, was it. He's not holding back, not at all quite the person or your side, powerful too." Thon leaned closer, voice dripping venom. "You could have done anything. Stop Hitler. Prevent every world war. Save JFK. But no, you chose mommy." Barry looked up, breathing heavily, pain and guilt mixing in his eyes. "In the most selfish act imaginable, you broke the timeline to save one woman. Your mother," Thon spat, punctuating it with a vicious kick to Barry's gut. Barry collapsed, but before Thon could land another blow, something crashed into the ground with a thunderous impact. Boom. Dust flew everywhere. Max had landed. "You shouldn't have killed his mother," Max said, his voice low, dark, and venomous. "None of this would have happened, you redade bastard." Max's hands flew into a hand seal, chakra bursting from his body like a storm. Wood style. Wood dragon jutsu. Behind him, the ground split open as a massive wooden dragon erupted, roaring as it lunged at Thon. Thon zipped away, the dragon tearing after him in hot pursuit. As it closed and Thon changes direction heading towards them, Max seeing this released the jutsu. The dragon collapsed into rubble and smoke, kicking up a cloud of blinding dust. Thon grinned. "Gotcha." He sprinted through the cloud and landed a brutal punch to Max's face, cracking a piece of his mask. But before he could retreat, wooden spikes shot out from Max's body, nearly impaling him. A few grazed his cheek and abdomen, tearing his suit. Thon skidded to a stop a distance away, breathing hard, blood trickling from his face. Max straightened up, his chakra flaring again. He reached up and touched his broken mask. A sharp fragment had shattered from the side, exposing half his face. Now, one eye stared out from the original eye hole, and the other burned through the broken section, revealing a cold, unblinking Sharingan. "TCH," he clicked his tongue in annoyance. With a swift motion, he unclasped his cloak and folded it neatly, placing it on a nearby broken pillar. "Damn thing was custom stitched," he muttered. "Taylor charged me a fortune." Behind him, Barry limped slightly as he stood, still favoring his injured leg. "So, what's the plan?" Barry asked, wiping blood from his chin. Max glanced over his shoulder. "A sneak attack won't work. He's too fast, too twitchy." "So," Max turned fully, chakra already humming around him like a second skin. "So we go full offensive. No holding back, keep up." Barry smirked faintly. "I should be saying that to you." Max didn't bother replying. He vanished in an instant, the ground where he stood shattering from the force of his departure. Barry's smirk widened. Show off. And with a crack of lightning, he launched forward after him, both of them rushing into the fray where Thawne was already preparing to tear them apart. Chapter 9. Max appeared above Zoom, his fist already cocked back like a cannon primed to fire. Thawne dodged just in time. Boom, as Max's punch slammed into the ground, shattering concrete and sending shockwaves through the air. From the left, Barry darted in and landed a solid blow across Thawne's jaw, making the speedster stumble. He zipped away just as a blazing fireball whistled past, launched by Max. Boom, the fireball exploded, engulfing the battlefield in flames and smoke. For a moment, nothing was visible, until Zoom burst through the haze, still running, lightning sparking off his boots. Barry chased after him in a blur of red, while Max surged forward atop the head of a roaring wood dragon. Barry then jumped. Max caught his wrist midair and hurled him with immense force toward Thawne like a missile. Barry slammed into him, tackling him to the ground. Crack, 2 punches to Thawne's face rattled his brain before he managed to land a counterpunch that knocked Barry aside. He pushed himself up, ready to flee, only to freeze in place. His limbs wouldn't move. Max landed softly in front of him, eyes glowing with cold, the ripples of the Rinnegan spinning in his gaze. Limbo. Border jail, Max said calmly. Unseen to everyone but Max, 2 shadowy clones from an alternate dimension had grabbed Thawne, holding him in place with unrelenting force. What is this? Thawne demanded, eyes darting in panic. Max didn't respond. Instead, he conjured a black receiver rod, extending it into a javelin. Without a word, he hurled it forward. Squelch. The rod pierced through Thawne's forehead, clean, merciless. His body twitched once, then collapsed lifelessly. Barry stared in stunned silence. You actually killed him. Max turned toward him, his face emotionless beneath the fractured mask. That was the intention all along. Well, that was anticlimactic, Barry muttered, catching his breath. Did you expect it to be hard? Max asked, dusting himself off. Honestly, yeah, Barry replied, eyeing him. Now that we're alone, who are you really? I'm no one, Max said flatly. Barry narrowed his eyes. I've been piecing things together. Took some time, but, from what I've gathered, you're the Tobi of my world. Max chuckled under his breath. Took you long enough. So you're from the original timeline too? Barry asked, brows raised. Max nodded. Yeah, how I ended up here, same as you. Still a mystery. Barry took a step closer. You know, you're not such a bad guy, Tobi. Why not stick around when this is over? Help us rebuild. Join the League. Use your power to actually make the world better. Max's gaze hardened beneath his cracked mask. I have no intention of joining your spandex-wearing circus. He turned away. I was changing the world already. In my own way. And I still intend to finish what I started. As he spoke, a massive shadow passed overhead. His bird, scorched and winged from battle, swooped down toward him. Max didn't wait for it to land. He leapt high, catching onto its back mid-flight with practiced ease. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have unfinished business. The bird beat its wings and soared back toward the battlefield. Barry watched him vanish into the sky, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Guy's a menace, he said to himself, but not the worst one around. Then, in a blur of lightning, he vanished, off to find Batman and Cyborg. Meanwhile, Clone Max 1 dragged Arthur and Diana outside, revealing the battlefield consumed by chaos. The animal path's summons tore through soldiers, leaving nothing but blood and ruin in their wake. See that? Clone Max said, pointing to Orm, who lay in a pool of blood, unmoving, a gaping hole in his chest. Arthur clenched his teeth in fury at the sight of his fallen brother. He struggled against his restraints, only for Clone Max 1 to slam his head into the ground with brutal force, cracking the stone beneath. Don't worry, my liege, the clone whispered coldly. You'll be joining him soon. He then turned to Diana, standing bound on his left. Look at your sisters one final time, Clone Max said, gesturing toward the battlefield, where Amazon warriors fell one by one to the animal path's relentless creatures. See what you've brought upon them. They fought valiantly, Diana spat, and fell in battle with pride. Like true warriors, I regret nothing. Clone Max removed his mask, revealing his face. Take a good look, he said, because this face is the last thing you'll ever see. He formed a hand seal. Thick vines burst from the ground, wrapping around Arthur and Diana, locking them in place. At that moment, the real Max landed beside them, dust kicking up around his feet. "You done playing the villain yet?" he asked flatly. "Yeah," Clone Max said with a shrug. "Was getting dull anyway. Though I gotta say, it was fun. What happened to your mask?" Before Max could answer, they both leapt backward, narrowly dodging a barrage of water whips, Calder's doing, as he attempted to free Arthur. Clone Max turned to Max. "Just end this already. Flash is about to fix the timeline." Max didn't answer. Instead, his chakra flared to life. His Susanoo erupted in brilliant energy, towering and menacing. As Max formed a series of hand seals, the Susanoo mirrored his movements, seal for seal. Then, darkness. All at once, the world fell still. Fighting ceased. Eyes turned to the sky. "Great Hera," one of the Amazons whispered, dropping her sword in despair. "The gods are punishing us," another muttered, eyes wide with horror. Calder finally freed Arthur from the vines. He supported the wounded king by the shoulder, trying to carry him away. But Arthur's gaze remained fixed on the stillbound Wonder Woman. "Calder, stop," Arthur said weakly. Calder froze. "It's over," Arthur said with a grim tone. "All we can do now is take that bastard with us." Shaking from the pain, Arthur raised a trembling hand and pressed a button on his belt. Far out at sea, hidden beneath the waves, his ship exploded, sending a brilliant flash skyward. "Well," Max muttered, glancing up at the sky. "Time to get out of here." He activated his perfect Susanoo, its armored form roaring to life as the meteor neared impact. "Wait, what about me?" Clone Max shouted from behind. Max didn't look back. "You've outlived your usefulness," he said flatly. "You son of a..." The clone's curses faded as Max launched into the sky, flying beyond the meteor's destruction radius. He landed near Cyborg, Batman, Barry, and the remaining resistance fighters, deactivating the Susanoo as he touched down. "I take it the meteor was your doing?" Batman asked, watching the sky. Boom. The meteor struck with a devastating shockwave, leveling everything in its path. "Yes," Max said casually. "You're insane," Grifter muttered. "I like it, even if I have no idea how you did that." "What now?" Cyborg asked, but before anyone could answer, another explosion erupted in the distance. A blinding light raced toward them, the underwater detonation triggered by Aquaman's final act. Batman turned to Barry and handed him a letter. "You know what to do. Give this to Bruce, for me." Barry stared at the envelope, then nodded solemnly. He turned to Cyborg, who gave him a silent nod of approval. Barry's gaze finally landed on Max. "We'll see you on the other side," he said. In a flash of lightning, he was gone. Cyborg turned next. "Well, it was a pleasure working with you gentlemen," he said, offering his hand. He shook with Max and Batman. Max looked to the approaching wall of fire and said, "The explosion's catching up fast. I'll make a barrier, sit tight." He quickly formed a hand seal. Wood style. Wood dome. A massive dome of living wood erupted from the ground, shielding the group in a thick protective shell. But before it sealed shut, Max leapt away, outside the dome. The others inside could only watch as he faced the inferno alone. Chapter 10. High above the battlefield, Max hovered in the sky, shrouded in his perfect Susanoo. The armored colossus gleamed against the backdrop of destruction as the earth below was swallowed by fire and shockwaves. He watched silently as the explosion Arthur had triggered swept across the ground like a tidal wave of annihilation, engulfing cities, oceans, and everything in its path. There was no escaping it, only enduring it. Then, ding, greater than template complete. Madara Uchiha, Jinchuriki of the 10 Tails. One-time transformation into Jubidera form granted. New template unlocked. Might Guy. Fusion progress. 0%. Max's eyes widened slightly, and a smirk tugged at his lips beneath the swirling energy of his Susanoo. "So, it's finally done," he muttered. "The devil's path is complete, and now comes the beast of youth." Max's eyes widened as the notification lingered in front of him like a divine revelation. Greater than one-time transformation. Jubidera unlocked. A form rivaling even Kagaya Otsutsuki in raw power. "Well, just, wow," Max muttered, his voice nearly drowned by the roar of the storm below. He hovered above the devastation, surrounded by swirling wind and ash, yet his mind was reeling from something far more overwhelming than the explosion beneath him. With this transformation, temporary or not, he could wipe out 99% of the heroes on Earth. That wasn't arrogance, that was a statement of fact. The power of the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. It made sense why it was a one-time use. Anything more would break the balance of the world, and probably the system too. After all, in the original timeline, even Madara only had it briefly, before betrayal cut his reign short. Greater than, wait, Max thought, his brow furrowing. Does that mean, when I complete a template, I get their ultimate form? His thoughts quickened, heart pounding with both excitement and suspicion. If that was true, if every template completed granted him access to the pinnacle of that person's power, then he already knew what awaited him at the end of Might Guy's path. Greater than the 8th gate. The gate of death. It sent a chill down his spine, not out of fear, but out of awe. So this is how the system works, he thought. Battle, killing, survival. That's what pushes fusion percentage. The more I bleed, the more I grow. He hadn't fully understood it before, only that combat seemed to accelerate his integration. But now he was starting to see the rules. Ding. Greater than reward unlocked. Madara 4th grade ninja war outfit. Max blinked as the notification faded. Well, I guess I have the whole set now, he muttered, glancing down at the tattoo on his wrist. A black spiral sigil etched into his skin, his link to the system. Through it, he could summon awarded gear, weapons, even store items in a near-infinite space. A storage system masquerading as a simple tattoo, but with power beyond imagination. He let out a slow breath, his perfect Susanoo still shimmering around him, casting long shadows across the clouds. Below, the light of the explosion was finally dying out. The inferno had passed, the earth smoldering and broken, yet eerily quiet. Max floated there, alone in the sky, watching the aftermath, when suddenly, his body began to glow. He looked down, eyes narrowing. His fingers shimmered with golden light, fading, breaking apart into motes, as if the very fabric of his being was being unraveled by time. So, I guess it's about time, he said quietly. The Susanoo crumbled beside him, dissolving into the ether like ash in the wind. His arm followed, then his shoulder. And as the final piece of his hand disintegrated, his head tilted upward, and he smiled. Then, he vanished. A silent burst of light scattered across the heavens. Max blinked. He was back in the Speed Force tunnel again, light bending and folding around him like a river of time. Ahead, 2 figures blurred through the glowing current, 2 berries, racing side by side. The one trailing slightly had a more rugged look, his suit singed and torn in places. Older, wiser, tired. That's the berry I know, Max muttered, floating weightless as the older berry surged forward and grabbed his younger self by the shoulder. The moment contact was made. Flash. Max blinked again. And suddenly, he was standing in his room. He blinked once, twice, then quickly patted himself down, chest, arms, legs. Everything's still here, he muttered in relief. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and flipped it open. His eyes locked onto the government ID inside. Name: Pietro Maximoff. Photo: him, clearly him. WTF, Max breathed out. He sat down on the edge of his bed, still staring at the ID. Pietro Maximoff, that wasn't just a name change, that was a full-blown retcon. He'd assumed that when Barry reset the timeline, he'd wake up naked in Star City again with nothing but the wind and bad luck. But this was different. He looked around his room. Everything was just like he remembered. Same chipped desk, same cluttered nightstand, even the poster of Jimi Hendrix still hung half-ripped on the wall. But this identity, this Pietro Maximoff thing, was new. Better than waking up without memories, Max muttered. He leaned back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. He remembered what happened when Barry fixed the timeline in the comics and movies. He didn't restore the original. He created a third timeline. A slightly neater, less chaotic version of the first, but still off well before Grey-Face descends with his army. In this new reality, the Justice League hadn't been formed yet. Events were reshuffled. And worse, Darkseid was coming. Max pinched the bridge of his nose, trying to ease the migraine building behind his eyes. He looked down at the ID in his hand and muttered with an exasperated sigh, couldn't I just get my own identity, the one I had been using for 7 whole months? The name staring back at him still read, Pietro Maximoff. Seriously, he grumbled, I sound like that damn speedster from the studio next door. It was bizarre. He hadn't chosen this name, and yet here it was, federally registered, clean, airtight. Not waking up naked in an alley was a step up, sure, but that didn't mean he was keeping it. Max had no intention of answering to Pietro. It would take too long to get used to being called by a new name. He needed to reclaim who he really was, Max Schiller. That's why he was heading to MISH, short for Michelangelo Torres. The identity forger he'd paid when he first arrived in this crazy reality. If anyone could fix this mess, it was him. Max opened his system space and willed his gear into existence. His mask appeared with a poof, cracked down the middle, a chunk missing from the side. Right, forgot I broke this fighting zoom, he muttered. He looked for his cloak, only to realize it was missing. Then it hit him, he'd folded it neatly and left it on the ground before teaming up with Flash to fight Zoom, and never picked it back up. Max slapped his forehead and dragged his hand down his face. Perfect, just perfect. Another poof, and the broken mask vanished, replaced by a new one, sleek, white, with 3 magatamas forming a triangle pattern around the eye slots, evoking the image of the Threedomo Sharingan. He smirked as the rest of his gear shifted into place, the 4th grade ninja war version of Madara's armor. Dark, regal, powerful. At least I look the part, he muttered, stepping out into the night. Sometime later, Max moved like a shadow across the rooftops of Starlight City, leaping from ledge to ledge in perfect silence. Every movement was sharp and efficient, pure ninja style. The city below buzzed with neon signs, honking cars, and late-night chatter. But above it all, Max remained unseen. He was then assaulted by a buzzing sound and looked to his left. A strange creature gliding just above the skyline, with no eyes and nose. Just sleek yellow armor with neon green veins that gleamed under the moonlight. 2 insect-like wings on its back beat rapidly, emitting a soft but unnerving buzzing sound. It hovered for a moment, scanning the streets below like a predator searching for prey, that then flew away. Max narrowed his eyes. What the actual hell? He muttered. Then louder, oh hell nah. With a burst of speed, Max launched himself forward, vanishing from the edge of the rooftop in a blur, going in pursuit. Chapter 11. Max darted across rooftops, tailing the insectoid creature from the shadows. Its yellow armor glinted under the moonlight, and its wings buzzed with a mechanical hum that made his skin crawl. Then it swooped. Max watched as the creature dove toward the street, snatching up a woman with brutal efficiency. All right, time to cut your shit, Max muttered coldly. He raised his hand. Universal pull. The air warped. The parademon shrieked as its flight path was violently reversed, yanked midair toward Max like a puppet on strings. With his free hand, Max conjured a black chakra rod, and the moment the creature was within reach. Thwack! Straight through the skull. It dropped like dead weight. Max caught the woman just in time and landed on the pavement below, gently laying her down. He slapped her cheek twice, not too hard, just enough. She stirred awake. Then, ah, get away, she screamed in blind terror. Max sighed and gave her 2 more light slaps. Her panic seemed to short-circuit as she blinked rapidly, grounding herself. All right, you're safe now, get out of here. She didn't speak, she just ran. Max watched her go, then muttered, ungrateful little bitch, before hopping back up to the rooftops. Just my luck, I just got back from Barry's mess, and now this. He scanned the sky for more intruders. Boom! A loud explosion ripped through the skyline. Max's eyes narrowed as a green blur zipped across the sky, slamming into a building. Green Lantern. Fighting a parademon, Max materialized another black rod and hurled it with precision. The projectile zipped through the air, impaling the parademon's skull in one clean hit. Green Lantern dropped to the ground with a grunt. I had that covered, pal, he said as he rose. And who are you supposed to be, samurai guy? Max didn't even blink. It's common courtesy to introduce yourself before asking someone else's name. Oh, samurai guy wants to be formal. Green Lantern scoffed. All right, you asked for it. He raised his ring. A massive green train appeared and charged toward Max. Without hesitation, Max activated Susano. A towering spectral warrior formed around him and caught the train mid-charge, tossing it like a toy. The glowing locomotive smashed into Lantern and hurled him through a nearby building wall. A second later, Lantern burst back out, fists glowing, fury in his eyes. He surged toward Max at top speed, until an invisible force struck him twice, cracking like thunder. He was launched backward, twice as fast as he'd charged. Max hadn't moved an inch. Max leapt away just in time as a blast of flames scorched the rooftop he'd been standing on. He twisted midair and landed lightly, only to see a parademon charging straight at him. TCH, Max grunted, conjuring a black rod in one hand, ready to strike. But before he could react, crash, a figure cloaked in black slammed into the parademon, pinning it to the ground with brutal force. "What were you doing at the docks?" the man growled, choking the creature out with unrelenting grip. Max's eyes widened slightly. "Batman!" The parademon shrieked and vomited a stream of fire toward the sky. Batman leapt off it just in time, disappearing into the shadows. At that moment, Green Lantern burst out of the rubble behind Max. "All right, Samurai Guy, round 2. But his eyes widened as he spotted the Dark Knight. He lifted his ring instinctively. "Batman, you're real." "Of course he is. He's standing right in front of you," Max said dryly. "Shut up, Samurai Guy. I wasn't asking you," Lantern snapped. "Who said you were?" Max replied, crossing his arms. Batman ignored the banter. "We need to go dark. Turn that thing off before they see us." "Before who sees us?" Lantern asked. "Beast." A spotlight suddenly bathed them in white light. "This is Gotham PD. Raise your hands and surrender." A voice barked from a helicopter above. "Them," Max muttered. "They don't like us," Green Lantern said with a shrug. "No one likes a chatterbox," Max shot back. "You got a problem with me, Samurai Guy," Lantern said, stepping into Max's face. Max didn't flinch. "I don't have a problem with you. You are the problem." "All right, break it off," Batman snapped. "We've still got that monster to catch." He fired his grappling gun and zipped to the next rooftop. Green Lantern pointed at Max. "This isn't over, Samurai Guy," he warned before flying after Batman. Max exhaled and muttered, "Someone's cranky." Then he rose into the air himself, his body lifted effortlessly by the Diva Path, and flew after them. They followed the parademon across rooftops and down alleyways until it suddenly vanished into a manhole leading to the sewers. The three landed silently around the opening. Batman raised a finger to his lips, a signal for silence, and dropped into the darkness below. Max followed without a word. Green Lantern descended last, speaking as his boots hit the damp concrete. "You guys should just let me handle this. After all, Green Lantern can do anything. Except keep your mouth shut, apparently," Batman muttered. "Whoa, someone forgot to get his fill of blood tonight," Lantern quipped. "I'm not a vampire," Batman deadpanned. "With the darkness, the voice, the disappearing thing, I really thought you were," Lantern said. Max, already annoyed, cut in. "Your voice is really starting to annoy me." "Oh yeah, want a piece of me, Samurai Guy?" "Shush, I hear something," Batman said sharply. They froze. A low growl echoed through the tunnel ahead. Dim light flickered. The parademon stood hunched near the wall, attaching a metallic device that pulsed ominously. Lantern's eyes widened. "Oh crap, that's a bomb. And he just armed it." "Lantern, wait," Batman shouted, but it was too late. The parademon turned sharply toward them, its mechanical eye glowing red. "For Darkseid," it roared, and exploded violently. Max instantly raised a hand. A pulse of gravity warped the air around him and Batman, forming a shimmering dome that deflected the fireball and absorbed the shockwave. The flames passed. Smoke lingered. Ash fell like snow. Lantern, singed but alive, hovered nearby, coughing. He looked over, blinking. "For Darkseid, what the hell does that mean? Who the hell is Darkseid?" Max's expression turned grim. "A cosmic conqueror. He goes around conquering inhabited planets and turns all intelligent beings into parademons," Max said grimly. What's a parademon? And how do you even know all this?" Green Lantern asked, suspiciously narrowing his eyes. "A parademon is the creature you just saw," Max replied, his voice flat. "And how I know this doesn't matter." Batman, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. "What happens to the planet afterward?" "It's terraformed, converted to match the harsh environment of his world," Max answered. Batman's expression hardened. "Then we might be facing a full-scale invasion." "Yes," Max confirmed without hesitation. "And what you're seeing here, this portal, is called a boom tube. It's a highly advanced gateway that opens a direct passage to a planet called Apocalypse." Green Lantern glanced at the fading energy trail in the air. "Let me guess, this Darkseid guy lives there." Max nodded. "He's their leader, and we need to prepare for his arrival." Green Lantern scoffed. "Why don't we just stop him from arriving?" "Because there are many of these boom tubes already planted across the world," Max said. "His arrival is almost inevitable. What we need to do now is gather more heroes. Form a resistance. We can't face this alone." Batman glanced sideways at Max, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully beneath the cowl. "I know just the place to start." Max looked at him, Metropolis. Batman gave a short nod. Green Lantern sighed. Well, this just got a lot more complicated. Max looked up at the sky, a grim expression settling over his features. This is only the beginning. Chapter 12. We need to take this to STAR Labs. Maybe they can figure out a way to shut it down, Batman said. Though the chances of them actually managing that are slim, it's better than keeping it, Max replied. I'll make a clone take it there. With a puff of smoke, a perfect replica of Max appeared beside him. He handed the mother box to the clone. So you can make clones too. Neat, Green Lantern muttered. What he didn't know was that Max had an ulterior motive. He wasn't just sending the mother box away for safety, he knew it was a key component in the transformation of Victor Stone into Cyborg. Alright, let's move, Batman said. I can take us there, Green Lantern offered, conjuring a glowing green jet with his ring. Max and Batman climbed aboard, and they took off into the sky. Sometime later, the jet landed smoothly. The three stepped out into a windswept, abandoned industrial zone. Superman is close. I've been tracking his movements, Batman said, pulling out a beeping handheld device. With what? Your own satellite? Green Lantern asked sarcastically. Batman looked at him flatly. Yes, I was kidding, you have your own satellite. The man just confirmed it. What part of? Yes, did you not understand? Max deadpanned. Before another word could be spoken, a red and blue blur shot overhead and crashed into an old building nearby, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. That's him, Batman said. All right, Green Lantern's got this, GL said confidently, flying into the building. Almost immediately, the sounds of combat and green energy blasts echoed out. Batman and Max exchanged a look. Moments later, Green Lantern came flying out of the building in a heap, groaning as he slammed into Max's feet. Then Superman stepped out of the ruins, hovering just above the ground with his cape billowing. His eyes locked onto Max. So, what can you do? He asked before flying straight at him. Max leapt back just in time. Superman's punch shattered the ground where he'd stood, sending Green Lantern tumbling through the air. Batman quickly caught him and retreated. Superman then charged again. Max's pupils shrank, so fast, as he quickly drew his gun by and raised it just in time. Boom! The impact shook the air as Max was blasted backward, his arms rattling from the sheer force transferred through the fan-like weapon. He smashed through multiple walls of a warehouse before flipping midair and skidding to a halt outside. Superman came barreling after him. Max raised a hand. Almighty push. A gravitational wave exploded outward, halting Superman mid-flight. The Man of Steel strained against it, muscles flexing, pushing forward inch by inch. Max's eyes narrowed. Limbo. Border jail technique. Invisible strikes slammed into Superman, catching him off guard. He was hurled backward through the same hole Max had created. On the other side, Batman ducked as Superman whooshed overhead and stopped in midair, nursing his jaw. Max casually stepped out of the ruined warehouse, twirling his gun by. He hurled a black rod at Superman. Superman tilted his head, narrowly dodging, but a shallow cut formed on his cheek. Blood trickled down. Superman touched it, eyes narrowing. Magic. We're not your enemies, Batman said calmly. We need your help. You bruise, but you don't kill. Clark. Superman slowly descended. You've made your point, Bruce Wayne. Green Lantern blinked. Wait, who the hell is Bruce Wayne? Max approached, gun by resting on his shoulder. We need you to come with us. We're facing something serious. What is coming? Superman asked. Something very ugly, Green Lantern said, nursing his ribs. And we need all the manpower we can get to stop it, Batman added. Before Superman could reply, a radio signal rang in his ears. The president's jet was under attack, monstrous creatures swarming mid-flight. I'll be back, Superman said, and took off in a sonic boom. There go the big guns, Green Lantern muttered. He'll be back, Batman said. Now we need to gather the others. Who else do you have in mind? Green Lantern asked. Wonder Woman, Batman replied, pointing toward the horizon. She's not far from here. Well then, let's go. In style, of course, Green Lantern said, conjuring a glowing green helicopter. Max and Batman climbed in, and the craft rose into the air, headed toward their next ally. On planet Apocalypse, a thick haze of ash hung heavy in the infernal sky. Flames licked the blackened stone of towering citadels, and the ground trembled with the rhythmic march of countless parademons in formation. Within the obsidian halls of the throne chamber, a deep voice rumbled through the shadows. Desaad, it spoke, like molten iron scraping against stone. What news from our agents on Earth? A hunched figure knelt at the base of the throne, his gaunt form cloaked in tattered robes. One hand pressed to his chest in solemn reverence. My lord, Desaad rasped, his voice like a dying wind. The heroes of Earth have managed to secure one of the mother boxes. They have begun to mobilize, spreading across major cities in preparation. Their defenses are increasing rapidly. He hesitated briefly, choosing his next words with care. I fear, sire, if we do not move our timetable forward, we may lose the element of surprise. For a long moment, there was silence. Then came the sound of something ancient and terrible stirring. The armored giant that was Darkseid rose from his throne, his red eyes glowing like twin stars of damnation. So be it, he said, voice heavy with finality. Let the invasion begin. Let their champions rise, only to kneel before me. Desaad bowed lower, trembling with dread and worship. Yes, my lord, as you command. Batman, Max, and Green Lantern flew low over the city ruins, smoke and fire curling into the ash-colored sky. Without warning, the silence shattered, an ear-splitting shriek cut through the air as an army of parademons descended from the clouds, wings buzzing like a swarm of metallic hornets. Here we go, Green Lantern shouted, summoning a massive green minigun with his ring and letting it rip into the horde. Batman flipped from his glider midair, hurling batarangs with precision. When they got too close, he met them with bone-breaking martial arts, striking weak points with lethal efficiency. Max dropped to the ground in front of them, fingers flying through a single hand sign. Fire style, majestic destroyer flames. A sea of fire erupted from his mouth, a roaring inferno that engulfed the advancing parademons. The blast melted the road beneath them, slagging asphalt and steel alike. Max cut off the jutsu just in time, smoke rising from the scorched battlefield. Green Lantern hovered beside him, whistling low. Okay, damn, not bad, samurai guy, he said, patting Max on the shoulder. But Green Lantern had it all in the bag. Eyes up, Batman growled. More incoming. The building across from them trembled before dozens of parademons burst through the windows, screeching as they dove toward the group. Damn it, Green Lantern cursed, dropping into a combat stance back to back with Max and Batman. Is there an end to these guys? Suddenly, a scarlet blur streaked through the battlefield. In an instant, a dozen parademons collapsed. Flash skidded to a stop, grinning. Miss me, Flash, my boy, Green Lantern called out, fist bumping him. Glad you could make it. Flash gave a quick nod and scanned the others. Batman, the Batman, he's real. Yeah, he's over there. Tall, broody, throws things, Green Lantern joked. Flash's eyes widened as he zoomed to Batman's side. It's an honor to finally meet you, sir. Don't bother, Green Lantern called over. Total douchebag, like samurai guy here. At least I can keep my mouth shut, Max muttered coolly. Flash scratched the back of his head and turned to Max. Hi there, Tobi, right. Nice to meet you. Max raised an eyebrow behind his mask, but played along. Likewise, Flash. Before another word could be said, a new wave of parademons landed, this time kneeling before the group. For Darkseid, they roared in unison. Then, ha! A battle cry cut through the chaos as Wonder Woman descended from the skies, slicing through the creatures with divine fury. Her sword gleamed, dripping with molten ichor as she turned to face the team. Greetings, warriors, she said, sword raised, her presence commanding. A sonic boom cracked the sky as Superman landed beside them, eyes glowing red. Good, Green Lantern said. The more the merrier. A moment later, Cyborg crashed down near them, stabilizing mid-landing, jets still sputtering. He walked forward, face serious, followed by who Shazam descended from the sky, lightning crackling around him as he landed with a boom beside the heroes. He pulled down his hood with a grin. What's up, guys? I'm with him, he said, nodding toward Cyborg as he stepped forward. I know what they're doing, Cyborg said. They're terraforming Earth, and turning humans into them. Yeah, we figured that out, Green Lantern muttered. So what now? Flash asked. Max's eyes narrowed behind the mask. His voice dropped. Now, prepare to give the next fight your all. He looked to the horizon. The ocean churned, waves crashing unnaturally outward. A glowing, massive device emerged from the sea, steam and fire erupting as hundreds of parademons poured from it like locusts. And then, he emerged. Darkseid, Chapter 13. The ground trembled as towers clawed their way out from beneath the city, steel roots cracking asphalt and concrete. More parademons poured out like a swarm of locusts, screeching and descending upon the terrified streets below. I'm guessing that's the bad guy, right? Green Lantern asked, hovering midair, eyeing the massive figure surrounded by parademons. Yeah, that's him, Max said grimly. He's got shit you've never seen. Superman stepped forward, his cape fluttering. Doesn't look that tough to me. Max didn't even bother replying. Darkseid floated toward them, arms clasped behind his back, his expression carved in stone. Parademons swarmed behind him like shadows answering to death itself. 2 fighter jets roared overhead, locked on target. They fired. Missiles screamed toward Darkseid. His eyes lit up, burning red. ZWOOM. Twin Omega beams zigzagged wildly through the air, intercepting both missiles mid-flight and detonating them in massive explosions. The beams didn't stop. They curved backward mid-air, chased the jets, and blasted both out of the sky in twin fireballs. No, Flash shouted as the wreckage rained down. Darkseid hovered just above the cracked ground, staring the League down. His voice was cold and absolute. I am entropy. I am death. I am Darkseid. Stand back and let Green Lantern handle this, Hal said, cocky, flying in with glowing constructs ready. Bad idea. Max muttered. Lantern stop, Batman shouted. Green Lantern got within striking range. And then boom. Darkseid's fist moved faster than anyone could react. The punch landed square in Lantern's chest with a sonic boom, sending him rocketing backwards like a ragdoll. Max leapt after him, summoning a massive ethereal blue hand to intercept him midair. He caught Hal, barely, but the sheer momentum sent them both spiraling out of control. Crash! They slammed through the side of a building. On the ground, Wonder Woman unsheathed her sword. Attack! She shouted, charging straight through the parademons. She sliced down 2, then leapt toward Darkseid, her blade raised high. She brought it down on his shoulder. Shatter! The sword exploded into pieces on impact. Darkseid's eyes narrowed. He grabbed Diana by the legs and, wham! Wham! Used her like a club, smashing Superman to the ground with sickening force. Clark groaned, trying to rise. Thud! Darkseid kicked him in the face, launching him into the air. Still gripping Diana, he hurled her after him. Crash! They collided midair, spiraling helplessly. Then the Omega beams returned. ZWOOM. They struck both heroes mid-flight, detonating in a blast of crimson light. Wonder Woman screamed in agony, her body taking the brunt as they were hurled toward the building Max and Lantern had crashed into. Shazam, Cyborg, and Flash raced in. No, Flash roared. Darkseid simply raised both hands. Boom, he clapped. A shockwave burst outward, flattening cars, shattering glass, and blasting all 3 heroes backward like leaves in a hurricane. The street cracked. Buildings nearest to him collapsed under the pressure. Smoke and debris filled the air. For a moment, silence. Then the rubble exploded outward as Max and Green Lantern charged from opposite sides, conjuring massive ethereal fists, one green, one blue. With a synchronized roar, they slammed their constructs into Darkseid. He didn't even flinch. The impact shattered the fists like glass against a mountain. Max and Green Lantern leapt back as the rest of the team regrouped around them. This isn't working. We need to work together, Max said, frustration in his voice. Batman dropped down from the rooftop where he had retreated when Darkseid began his assault. Max turned to Green Lantern. Lantern, work with me. Make something humanoid. Green Lantern nodded. Max stepped beside him. We'll lead the charge, everyone else, follow through. Then, Max made a single hand seal. 20 shadow clones appeared around him in puffs of smoke. Deal with the parademons and rescue the civilians. Right, the clones saluted, then dispersed into the chaos. Darkseid's eyes narrowed, glowing a menacing red. He raised both hands. Shit! Stop him, Max shouted, but it was too late. Darkseid slammed his hands into the ground. The impact unleashed a colossal explosion, leveling the surroundings. When the dust cleared, a 100-meter-tall giant stood before the team. Glowing green with sleek blue armor and massive wings, it stood like a divine protector. Max and Green Lantern were nestled within its head, encased in shimmering energy. The golem reared its massive fist and struck down at Darkseid. Darkseid caught the blow with one hand. The ground beneath him exploded as buildings collapsed in a 50-meter radius. Seizing the moment, Superman and Wonder Woman launched at Darkseid's exposed side, fists colliding with a boom that sent him hurtling toward the bay. Shazam followed, lightning crackling from the sky as he channeled it through his body and hurled it toward the dark god. The blast hit, exploding with a thunderous boom and sending water shooting into the heavens. "Did we get him?" Shazam asked, breathing heavily. "We should have," Green Lantern replied beside Max in the Susanoo-clad golem. "That's not even close to enough," Max muttered grimly. "Something's wrong, he wasn't this strong in the movies." The waters began to churn, then swirl, then Darkseid emerged, smiling. Flash blurred across the surface of the water to strike, but his eyes widened. Darkseid was tracking him. Darkseid threw a punch. Flash dodged. Barely, but the shockwave sent him tumbling across the waves. He slammed into the docks and sank beneath the surface. "Flash!" Cyborg shouted and immediately dove into the water after him. Before anyone else could react, Darkseid vanished in a blur, followed by a deafening sonic boom. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Max and Green Lantern, who were within the giant's head. His fist collided with the golem's face, cracking the armor and causing the construct to stumble back into the sea. Max and Green Lantern struggled to keep it stable. Darkseid reeled back for another blow, when Wonder Woman, Superman, and Shazam intercepted him. Wonder Woman raised her broken sword, aiming for his eye. Darkseid roared. A pulse of blinding red Omega energy erupted from his body, blasting them all back. Shazam and Wonder Woman screamed in agony as the red flames burned through them, their bodies crashing into the sea. Darkseid turned. Superman shot toward him, firing his heat vision. Darkseid responded with Omega beams, and the two forces clashed in a war of light. But then, Darkseid's beams grew stronger. They carved through Superman's heat vision, striking him square in the chest and pushing him deep into the water. Steam rose violently as the beam boiled the ocean. When it finally ceased, Superman floated, unconscious. Then, a gigantic blue sword descended from above, crashing down onto Darkseid. The impact generated a tidal wave hundreds of meters high and sent Superman's limp body flying. Two parademons caught him mid-air and carried him away. Darkseid grunted as he held the glowing sword, his arms trembling. Cracks spread across the blade. "Damn it, why won't he just fall?" Green Lantern shouted. "Concentrate." Max growled through gritted teeth, blood trickling down his chin inside the mask. The sword shattered. In a blur of motion, Darkseid punched through the Susanoo-clad golem, slamming his fist into Max's gut. Max's vision went black. Blood filled his mask as he was launched from the golem like a missile, crashing into the distant city and carving through buildings. The ethereal golem faded. Darkseid now floated above the water, gripping Green Lantern by the throat as he struggled for breath. Chapter 14. Wonder Woman emerged from the water first, hair loose and soaked, her arms spotting burns, her armor scorched and battered. Shazam followed behind her, his suit stained with dark, singed spots from the blast. Without hesitation, Diana charged forward to aid Green Lantern. Her golden lasso of truth flashed through the air, wrapping around Darkseid's arm just as he continued choking the unconscious Lantern. With cold indifference, Darkseid grabbed the lasso with one hand, his other still clamped tightly around Lantern's throat, and yanked it, pulling Wonder Woman toward him like a ragdoll. She barely had time to react before his fist met her midair. The impact was thunderous. Diana was sent hurtling backward, fast. Shazam bolted upward, catching her in his arms mid-flight, though the sheer force still pushed them both through the air before they skidded across the surface of the water. Meanwhile, Green Lantern's struggling ceased, he had finally lost consciousness. Without care, Darkseid dropped him. Lantern's body plummeted toward the water, until a sleek, black batwing swept down from the smoke-filled sky. Its clawed landing gear snatched the falling hero by his collar just in time, swooping away from the battlefield. At the helm, Batman, stone-faced and focused, guiding the jet back toward Shazam and Wonder Woman. At the docks, Cyborg emerged from the ocean depths, dragging a groaning Flash in his arms. "This isn't working," Shazam muttered, steadying Wonder Woman as she got to her feet again. "We must keep fighting, to the bitter end," Diana said, voice firm, though her body trembled. Batman's voice echoed from the Batwing's external comms as he hovered above. "We need to regroup. We won't win like this." He peeled away, flying back toward the city perimeter to drop off Lantern with Cyborg. On the ground, Wonder Woman's eyes followed Darkseid, who now floated calmly above the ruined harbor, hands clasped behind his back, a silent god of war. He made no move to chase them. Instead, he turned away, toward the city. Then he raised his eyes. Twin beams of crimson omega energy erupted from them, carving through the skyline like hot blades through butter. Buildings crumbled. Explosions rippled outward as parademons clashed with Max's clones. The team regrouped at the shattered docks, battered and soaked. Batman disembarked from the Batwing, carrying Green Lantern over his shoulders in a fireman's carry. He approached Cyborg, who was kneeling beside the now conscious Barry. Flash coughed violently, hacking up seawater as he woke. "He's too strong," Cyborg said grimly. "We can't win this, not without Superman. Our best chance is to send him back." Shazam, still scorched and panting, looked over. "Do you have a way?" "Yes." Cyborg raised his arm, revealing a glowing device partially embedded in his hand. This is a mother box. I can use it to open a boom tube, a gateway that can take him back to his planet Apocalypse. It won't be easy, but if we time it right, it could work." "Then we need to find Superman first," Barry said, rubbing his temples. "Where's the masked guy?" Shazam asked, glancing around. Before Batman could answer, a voice cut in. "I'm right here." Max stepped out of the shadows, peeling off the damaged remnants of his cracked samurai armor, revealing a black, form-fitting combat suit beneath. He no longer wore a mask. The last one had gotten filled with blood when Darkseid punched him, and he hadn't bothered with a transformation jutsu. He knew he wouldn't be able to maintain it now. Max walked over to Batman and placed a hand on the unconscious Green Lantern. His palm glowed green. Moments later, Lantern groaned and stirred. Batman led him down gently. "What did I miss?" Green Lantern mumbled, rubbing his neck. "Pretty much nothing," Batman said dryly. "Great. So, where's that stone-faced bastard? I'm ready for round 2. "Don't be impulsive, Lantern," Batman warned. "You won't survive alone. We need to attack as a unit, but first, we get Superman." "Then what?" Wonder Woman asked. "Then we hit him with everything we've got, and send him home," Batman replied. "There's still a problem," Max said. "In all the skirmishes we've had with him, Darkseid hasn't even tried. He's shown us just enough to remind us we're outclassed." "You're saying, he's been holding back?" Lantern asked, blinking. "Yes, I just don't know how much." "That complicates things," Batman admitted. "But we don't have another option." "Who's going after Superman?" Flash asked. "I'll go," Batman said. "While I'm gone, hold Darkseid off as long as you can and prevent him from further destroying the city. If there's a window to send him back, use it." "Then it's settled," Wonder Woman said, nodding. "We'll buy you time." "All right, let's clap it up," Shazam said with forced enthusiasm, clapping his hands. Everyone stared at him. "Seriously," Lantern muttered. A beat of silence. Then Max finally spoke. "I'll hold him off." "What do you mean, you'll hold him off?" Flash asked. "Exactly what I said. Why make this harder than it has to be?" Cyborg argued. "We can do this together. You saw what he did to us. We couldn't land a clean hit. He overwhelmed us." Max paused. "I'm not trying to die. But if I can buy you time to form a proper strategy, to get Superman back, I'll take that risk." "What makes you think you'll do better alone?" Barry asked. "Because I've been holding back," Max said. "Every time I attacked, I had to avoid friendly fire. Had to limit my movements to protect the city." Batman narrowed his eyes. "If you go all out, can you beat him?" "I don't know," Max admitted. "But it's better than taking turns getting our asses kicked." "Dude, he'll kill you," Shazam said. "I'm with him," Lantern added. "This is suicide. I need all of you at full strength for the final push," Max said firmly. "When I draw him back here, that'll be your shot." He turned and began walking away. "Wait up," Green Lantern called. "We can still do this together." "Let him go," Batman said, stopping him. "He might know more about Darkseid than any of us. If he says he stands a better chance alone, we trust him." "You're really letting him go?" Lantern snapped. "Letting him get himself killed. He said it himself. We've seen what Darkseid can do. If Tobi is right about him holding back, we have even less of a chance if we go in as a group. Unless you've got a hidden trump card up your sleeve, you're welcome to take his place or join him." That silenced Green Lantern. Max stopped a few steps away. He turned his head just enough to glance back at them. "Thanks, Batman." Then he looked at all of them. "I'll be back soon." And with a flicker of chakra and a burst of wind, Max vanished. "So, what now?" Green Lantern muttered, arms crossed. "We just sit here and wait for him to either get his ass kicked, or bring Darkseid right to us." "Stay here," Batman said, climbing back into the cockpit of the Batwing. "And be ready." The engines roared to life, kicking up wind and debris. Without another word, the Batwing lifted into the air and streaked toward the black fortress floating in the distance, where Superman was being held. As the jet disappeared into the clouds, a heavy silence fell over the group. Wonder Woman tightened her burned arm with a makeshift wrap. Shazam sat on a broken piece of the dock, lightning still sparking faintly across his shoulders. Flash paced restlessly. Cyborg kept an eye on the scanner. And Green Lantern just sighed. He's really gonna try it alone, huh? Looks that way, Flash said, staring out over the battlefield. Darkseid hovered midair, his eyes glowing crimson as he continued his ruthless assault on the city, unleashing destruction with every step. Then, a thud echoed atop a nearby skyscraper. Max stood there, facing him. His eyes shifted, morphing into the Rinnegan. He raised one hand, calm and deliberate. Shinra Tensei. A wave of invisible force exploded outward. The shockwave crushed buildings behind Darkseid, leveling them like matchsticks. The tyrant staggered midair from the impact, but surged forward through the pressure, preparing to retaliate. Only, Max was gone. Boom. Darkseid crashed into the spot Max had just vacated, cratering the rooftop in an instant, only to be blasted away a second later as Limbo clones struck from all sides. The impact hurled him through 3 skyscrapers. He skidded to a stop, hovering as he looked up, only to see a massive wooden dragon roaring down toward him. With a twitch of his neck, Darkseid's eyes lit up. Twin Omega beams sliced upward, cleaving the dragon cleanly in two. Its halves slammed into the ground beside him, throwing up clouds of smoke and debris. Whistling, his eyes narrowed, 20 missiles dropped from above like rain. Boom, 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 boom. The sky and street vanished behind layers of fire and metal as buildings crumbled under the pressure. On a distant rooftop, Max stood tall, steam rising from his forearms as the launchers retracted back into his arms. But then, Darkseid burst through the smoke. Shit, Max cursed, activating his ribcage Susano just as the tyrant punched. Crack, the ethereal ribs shattered like glass. Darkseid's fist drove into Max's chest like a battering ram, sending him flying into the sky, blood trailing from his mouth. But Max bit down the pain. With a burst of smoke, a massive summoned bird appeared beneath him midair. He landed atop it, using the moment to regroup as it carried him away from the city. 2 red streaks lit up the sky. Omega beams. Max leapt off just in time. The beams struck the bird, which vanished in a puff of smoke as Max twisted in midair and summoned perfect Susano. A colossal warrior of chakra formed around him and reared back a punch. Darkseid flew toward him like a missile. Their fists collided in the air. Boom. A massive shockwave exploded outward, flattening clouds and rupturing the sky. The Susano's arm shattered, fragments scattering like glass in a hurricane. Darkseid's eyes glowed again. Max didn't hesitate. He raised the gunby, chakra surging through him as the Omega beams struck his Susano. The Susano held, barely, but then cracked as the beams penetrated. Max raised the gunby just in time, deflecting the deadly energy but getting blasted out of the Susano, sent spiraling. He crashed into a distant mountainside, carving a trench through solid rock. Coughing blood, Max struggled to his feet and clapped his hands. Wood style. Nativity of a world of trees. The ground rumbled. Massive vines erupted everywhere, wrapping around rocks, stretching skyward like titans. Giant buds bloomed and spewed clouds of golden pollen, blanketing the sky in a hypnotic haze. Darkseid roared, punching and incinerating the vines with Omega beams, but they kept coming. The onslaught was relentless. Snarling, he unleashed his beams in a 360-degree blast, carving a burning ring around himself. Then he charged forward again. One punch, straight into Max's chest. Thwack, his hand went clean through, only for Max to turn into wood and collapse. A clone. Darkseid barely turned before a voice echoed above. Planetary devastation. Chapter 15. Max shouted, stretching his arm toward Darkseid as the center of his technique. The ground trembled violently, cracking beneath their feet. Chunks of earth and rock were ripped from the landscape, rising into the air and swirling around Darkseid. At first, he easily destroyed the incoming debris, fist-shattering boulders like glass, but the swarm grew relentless. Soon, the sky was filled with a spiraling mass of stone and rubble forming a colossal sphere. Max jumped down, feet planted wide, hands pressed together in a prayer seal. Blue chakra flared around him like a blazing aura. Veins bulged on his face from the strain as the gravitational force expanded. Moments later, a massive crater marked where the land had been torn away. Floating high above was the sphere, hundreds of meters wide, a miniature moon forged by Max's jutsu. Silence fell. Then, the sphere cracked, glowing red energy leaking through fissures in its surface. With a thunderous explosion, the entire mass detonated, sending debris raining from the sky like a meteor shower. Max raised his arm instinctively to shield his eyes, too late. A sudden shockwave knocked the air from his lungs as Darkseid slammed him into the ground at blinding speed. Dust and debris were blown away by the sheer force of his movement, a sonic boom trailing behind. Boulders fell with dull, echoing thuds as the battlefield shuddered beneath the impact. Darkseid lifted Max by the chest, bringing him face to face. His eyes glowed crimson with lethal intent. Max, bloodied and bruised, coughed, but managed a smirk through gritted teeth. Gotcha. Suddenly, a massive wooden dragon erupted from beneath the battlefield, coiling around both combatants. Its maw clamped tightly onto Darkseid, draining his energy. The beast's bark-blackened body darkened further where it touched him, sapping his strength like a parasitic vine. Darkseid's eyes narrowed, just as the Max in his grasp crumbled into wood. A clone. High above, the clouds parted. The real Max hovered above a massive descending meteor. Wind howled around him as he outstretched his palm. Shinra Tensei. The gravitational force behind it increased exponentially as the meteor accelerated. Max didn't stop there. His perfect Susanoo materialized with a deafening roar, pushing the meteor from behind. The size of the meteor dwarfing the Susanoo, its arms adding momentum to the falling rock. With a final shout, Max and his Susanoo thrust the meteor down. It collided with Darkseid in a blinding eruption of force and fire. Boom! Dust flew into the air. Back in the city, the heroes stood in stunned silence, watching the distant horizon where a massive meteor had just plummeted from the sky. Even from this far, the shockwave and dull thunderclap were impossible to miss. Can Darkseid pull meteors from space too? Green Lantern asked, brow raised, or was that Toba's doing? If that was Darkseid, Barry muttered, arms crossed, then he was seriously holding back when he was beating the hell out of us. So wait, Darkseid can just yeet meteors from orbit? Shazam asked, eyes wide. It was Tobi. Cyborg cut in. He summoned the meteor to hit Darkseid. I saw it happen on satellite imagery. Whoa, that's so cool. He has to show me how he did that when he gets back, Shazam said, clearly impressed. Ignoring the fanboying, Green Lantern added, well, looks like Samurai Guy wasn't bluffing about holding back. He's the real deal. He's quite the formidable warrior, Wonder Woman said solemnly. It's a shame we can't fight alongside him against this Darkseid of yours. Yeah, Flash agreed, we'd probably just get in the way. I really wanna see that fight up close, Green Lantern muttered. No, we stay here, Cyborg reminded them. That was the plan. Tobi weakens Darkseid, draws him here, and then we hit him together. Buzzkill, Flash muttered. I can show you the live feed, though, Cyborg added, tapping his cybernetic eye. A beam of light projected into the air, forming a holographic display of the battle site. The screen showed smoke rising from the devastated landscape, chunks of rock scattered everywhere from the impact of the meteor. Slowly, the dust was starting to settle. Green Lantern blinked. Huh, yeah, that works too. Max panted heavily as he hovered above the battlefield, watching the dust slowly dissipate from the aftermath of his last attack. His chakra reserves were running dangerously low. The relentless battles, each more intense than the last, had taken a toll on him. Ever since being pulled into the Flashpoint timeline, he hadn't had a moment of rest. He had been spamming chakra-intensive techniques left and right, pushing even Madara's monstrous reserves to their limits. Yes, his arsenal was vast. Madara's template have him with countless jutsu, but most of them had proven ineffective against Darkseid. The others were too weak to even bring up. Only bloodline-related techniques had managed to make an impact, but those burned through chakra at an alarming rate. The irony, the only technique Max had ever personally learned from scratch was the Rasengan. And he'd stopped there, thinking the rest of his arsenal was wide enough to cover any threat. Now, he regretted not pushing further, not evolving the Rasengan into the Rasenshuriken. Genjutsu had also turned out to be nearly useless in this world. It required the opponent to have chakra, which no one here possessed. He'd even experimented with terrain-based genjutsu, illusions that affected the environment rather than the mind. Those could technically work on non-chakra users, as they were simply visual deceptions cast over a defined area. But they came with a massive drawback: the caster had to remain stationary to maintain them. And even then, someone like Superman, whose vision could pierce down to the molecular level, could easily see through the illusion. Fooling him would require a level of visual detail so precise, so accurate, that it bordered on impossible. The only genjutsu he believed would truly work here was perhaps the infinite Tsukuyomi, but that came with its own cost, and even then, he wasn't sure it could dominate someone like Darkseid. The only technique Max had seen truly affect Darkseid was his wood release. His wood dragon had been able to momentarily restrain the tyrant, even managing to absorb a portion of his energy. But even that came with consequences. Darkseid's energy was corrosive. The moment the dragon latched on and began absorption, its wooden flesh began to rot and wither, as if poisoned from the inside out. That left Max with only two remaining options. His next plan was simple, yet incredibly risky: get close enough to touch Darkseid's head, and rip out his soul. Getting too close to him would be dangerous, bordering on suicidal, but if it worked, it might end the fight in one move. But even if that doesn't work, then he would have no choice but to use the one-time transformation, to become Jubidera. The rubble trembled. A massive boulder shifted, then lifted into the air with ease, hoisted single-handedly by Darkseid. His palm glowed ominously red, and before Max's eyes, the boulder was consumed by the same crimson aura, crumbling into dust that scattered in the wind. Darkseid rose into the air, floating until he was at eye level with Max. His glowing hands moved calmly behind his back, his expression unreadable, but his presence alone made the air feel heavier. The earlier meteor strike had actually made him feel pain. When Darkseid first began preparations to invade Earth, he'd sent parademons to scout for resistance. Among the data gathered, two beings stood out as potential threats: the Amazon, and the Kryptonian, whom he fully intended to bend into his greatest superparademon. But now, another name had to be added to that list. The previously masked hero is different. In sheer versatility and abilities alone, he had already accomplished something none of Earth's defenders had: he made him, Darkseid, feel pain. It was fleeting, a whisper of sensation. That fact alone made him unique, which is why it would be a shame to waste such a specimen. He shall turn him to a parademon. End of chapter. To be continued.